What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pokemon Rants. The journey we have here today is like no other. From shad fishing and nearly drowning in the American River while preserving his father's fishing rod, of course, to auditing the military's computer systems prior to the War Games release, and then participating perhaps in what is known as the biggest era of of basketball card history we have seen since the inception. And now to the most complete English Pokemon collection in the world. We will cover a vast array of probably slighted humor, self deprecation, verbal abuse, all of which will typically and should be reported to the authorities. But because it's here on the Pokemon Rants podcast today, we'll allow it to converge into the sliding doors, if you will, of today's conversation. To say that I'm honored to have Uncle Dave, aka David Persin, here with us today would be a gross understatement. So turn down or perhaps even off your sensitivity alerts so that you may fully enjoy the breadth of today's conversation as it unfolds, and join me in a warm welcome with David Persin to the Pokemon Rants podcast. David, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Justin, what in the God's tarnation was that? That was amazing. I mean, Rusty, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that word. Forgive me. I always forget. What in tarnation? What that was like? You've watched a few of the podcasts and you've watched a few of my stuff I've done. Like no one's done. My wife hasn't done that. That was amazing. Thank you. And by the way,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it allowed me to remember all the things I've forgotten at this advanced age in my life. So brought back some, histrionics, things that I
was good memories, later. Right?
But yeah, thank you, man. Yeah. That was very nice.
I was trying to capture a little bit of the old, the new, the childhood, and of course the present, all of which to remind you that you're still here in the chair awake with us here today. So thank you, David. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too. And, when it comes to risk reward, I really commend you for taking on a huge risk tonight, because this may be the last rants, whatever you do here, because I have been known to end a few podcast careers. I've been probably the Guinness Book of World Records guy for ending the most podcast careers by being the last guest on them. So congratulations. If you can navigate this, it's better. Like you said, it's even more dangerous than the bullets and grenades that were flying over your head in the Army. So, yeah.
Well, if I can make it through this, David, I figured life is going to be easy from here. So let's go ahead and jump in and see if we can make this happen, right? So, I mean,
I like it.
If you don't die, you get stronger. That's what I know. Yeah.
All right.
So, David, we'd go in many places in the beginning of these podcasts, and I will do my best. Now, I won't master this by any course, but I'm hoping your, elderly memory just helps me forget that you already told us these stories 1,000 times. So I'll try to navigate these in just the right way to make sure that we don't make you repeat too much of what you've already said. But I do want to ask a really simple but yet complicated question. Who is David Persin? How would you describe yourself here to the audience?
Wow. You know what I think about that question? It's very simple, but it's very complicated. That's what comes. Oh, wait a minute. You might have just said that. Who am I? I'm really like, number one is I'm a nobody. So we got to say that up front. I'm just a guy. And that's how I like it to be. Don't care what I've done. Don't care what I'm going to do. Don't care about any of it. I want to be relatable to mom and dad, to daughter and son, just somebody that enjoys living life. You can obviously tell a lot of self-deprecation, a lot of humor to thrown in to cope with whatever's going on in life. You need it.
You have to.
I take myself too seriously. And when things don't go very well, let them stew for a day or two, deal with whatever the bad emotions are, and then let the optimism come back and kind of fuel me through. So that's the emotional side, psychological side of me. And then there's all of the factual sides, which I don't even know if you even care about, want to know about. But, I like a married guy, and I own a car. I have a cat. There's things like that really everybody does, because that's what it is.
But, it's my life, yeah.
Yeah. So So I am, I'm a guy that's been married for many, many years. So I think we're approaching 30-ish. Nobody really knows. Nobody cares at this point. And so we've gotten used to each other. We say hello when we pass in the hallways, and then I tell her what I spent on Pokemon, and then it's a small fight. We have some safe words like mistletoe and things like that. Then we move right back into the next day. So that's the marriage. I have at least 8 kids that I know about from the states of California and Nevada. The New York ones, we're not sure. It's never been proven. And I have a lot of my kids have significant others. Almost, in fact, all of them actually, except my 13-year-old, have significant others. And we did move here from California about 3 years ago to the Vegas area. I have multiple security systems, folks. I have 3 different companies that cover the home, just in case you want to know. So be aware. Don't be looking to come over here because there's nothing here anyways. And I got a lot of grandkids. I think I've got 4 or 5 of them now coming around. And
wow.
Yeah, that's who I am. What do I do for a living? Why not get it out of the way early? I'll just keep talking, right. Justin. You sit there and act like you care. You're doing a great job, buddy. I have a financial advisory practice, which means I work for RBC Wealth Management. RBC is a Canadian company, top bank in Canada, kind of like Bank of America in the States. But advisory practice in the United States is out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I've been with them about 5 years after a long career with Merrill Lynch. And I'm the team leader of a group. We manage about $350–400 million worth of client assets. And so I still work for a living. Basketball coach. I've always been a coach in basketball. Started about 30 years ago.
Yeah, about 30.
Yeah. So I do that still. We have 8 club teams here in Vegas now, and wow. And then Pokemon and all the rest of it. So that's kind of what it looks like from the outside staring in.
Just through the security lens of the 3 security systems, of course, right?
Yeah. Which is a real serious thing. It's just funny. Like, well, you need one of them to just watch the house 24/7. Then you need the one that provides the glass breakage because the sliding doors could, that's not enough. And then you need cameras that alert you at night when the raccoons are out. So yeah,
the deer come by. Yeah.
Yeah, we just keep putting in new security systems for no reason. And let me tell you why it's stupid. Because nobody leaves the house. I haven't left the house in like 10 years. I'm like a recluse. I'm Howard Hughes. That's an old, you guys don't know who that is, but who would be a recluse? Pick a celebrity that never goes out. And my fingernails are almost like to the end of the thing because I haven't. So yeah.
Edward Scissorhands?
Yes, Edward Scissorhands, because I'm so reclusive I can't even trim my fingernails. Yeah.
I love it. So great introduction. I'm glad we got all that really kind of critical things up front, because that allows us to peel back this onion as we go through today's conversation. And I won't ask how you got into Pokemon because I already know. I actually want to know, how did you get into sports cards? Because that was the beginning for you. Your dad didn't really collect. You didn't really have a sibling or somebody else that you were collecting with. You kind of did it by yourself. But how did you get those first couple of packs? What was that first introduction into sports cards? Because I think that's probably the better origin story here.
Yeah, I mean, when I was very young, my dad was not only did he not collect, he was not into sports of any kind. He worked all the time. I didn't see him very much. And he was never into sports the entirety of his life. So, I had an uncle from Michigan who flew into California, my mom's brother. And he was heavy into sports and actually was unfortunately an addictive gambler. And so, but because of that, all of his life was spent on the couch watching sports. And so when he would visit, I would sort of take to that as well. And so that fueled my love of the statistics involved in sports. And so as a kid, I could, read off all of the home run leaders by heart and all of the batting average leaders, and followed the day-to-day on baseball, especially every single day. And then at that time, you would have magazines that would have companies that were selling complete sets. And so I remember there was a New York company called Renata Galasso, and I started buying from them with my own money at about maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 or 9.
Yeah. And I would send away, and here came this set. And that grew from little sets that they had produced that were their profit centers because they were specific. They weren't anything recognized, but they were kind of cool if you were a kid. And then you start buying the tops and all the other major sets that would come at the time. And so I just being, again, even at that point, looking to be a completionist and wanting to collect every card of every player, then you would have the update sets and the regular sets. And that just continued on for years, all the way through my youth until my young adulthood. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was the same. And I know I was just showing you a little piece of my childhood collection before we started, but I was the same with baseball, basketball. And I had like the checklist sheet. And of course, they give you like a little check card, but I need it in the binder with the pages of the cards. So I had it kind of written out. I'd put a check next to every card that I had, the ones I didn't have. And, you know, thankfully for us back in those days, at least to my knowledge now, and I could be vastly wrong here, but there was no variants. There was no trophy cards. There's none of these crazy things that we have to worry about in Pokemon. So it was pretty simple. You collect the card 1 through whatever, and you were done. Move on to the next set, which was, from a completionist standpoint, very satisfying. Yeah.
Well, you have to show your box now, because the reason I'm going to have you show your box that you just showed me is because this is the difference. And when I say something humorously, and I try, pretty much I fail miserably most of the time. But when I do, there's sometimes some seriousness underneath the humor. And I say that this is something, when you look at your box, to me, this shows me someone who really valued and treasured their childhood. Okay. Now, I have nothing from my childhood. Okay. Because I was bullied. I had zero self-esteem. So, you know, but look at this. Let's have everybody look at this amazing box of yours and the things you wrote on it.
We got basketball, Sir Charles. We got Baby Jordan, Shaq, Pink Panther here. Is it the shoes?
It's got to be the shoes.
It's got to be the shoes, right?
Yeah.
And I still have the original cards in here. These are some Fleers. You got some Sean Kemp upper deck here on this side. Some Fleer on the, this is of course in order. Fleer on this side, or tops. I'm sorry, tops on this side. Yeah. So this was definitely. I was going to show him something from my original binder, but I realized how upset I was on how the binder looked. And it was damaging my cards from obviously 30, 40 years ago. So I took that out of the binder to preserve the cards, but I kept the boxes. So this is what I had to show David today.
That's great. Yeah. What a wonderful memory. So, yeah.
So, you know, looking back, sports cards, I think is probably the better, you know, origin story for you, because it does have a resonance to where we'll end up leading to today. So that's why I want to touch on that just a little bit. And we will weave that into the conversation appropriately. But just before we do, one of the other pieces that I always like to do right up front, so it colors our conversation, is your education and background. I think it's in law degree. Is that correct?
So, yeah, the final stages of my education were going to law school at Santa Clara. And I always forget the decade, but I either finished in 87 or 97. It's a 7 somewhere.
Right. It's before 2000s. And
yeah, I think it was 97 actually. So, so yeah, I finished college, and I don't remember what from a very young age. Again, like, I'm a little bit interesting in the sense that a little different, you know, educationally, despite going to school and all those things, I was never a big reader. I've never been a reader of books or anything. So the person that resonates with me on that is Eddie Murphy, the comedian. And he always said that he learned everything he learned from television. And so that's kind of where my background was, you know, a tremendous amount of television watching and picking things up from there. And I was always in tune with the Perry Mason lawyer show back then.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I always had a goal of going to law school. And so when I had a break in however my life took at that point, I decided to go to law school and try to pursue the legal degree. And so I did. I graduated from Santa Clara in 97. And I was studying for the bar when I came upon an advertisement for a job that was right around the corner for Merrill Lynch. And so be a financial advisor. And nowadays it's much more difficult to get hired. But back then you came in, you took a math test, and if they wanted you and they thought you were good enough, they put you in. Yeah. And so that's what I did. I went a different course right away. I cannot handle any type of confrontation unless I'm really out of sorts. I mean, if you got me angry, I would certainly take care of business, but I don't mean it that way. What I really mean is I can't even watch people fight on TV or yell at each other. I don't like
Oh,
it.
really?
It's
Okay.
against me. My, just how I was brought up. I didn't like it. Um, so once I got into the legal field and I was doing employment law at that point for a place in California, and they offered me a position as a partner prior to taking the bar. And I went into court one day and I had prepared all this stuff to get ready to settle a case. And the other attorney looked across at me and she said, yeah, I said, I'd like to talk to you about settling or whatever. And she said, settle. I'm not going to settle with you. I have no interest. We're going to push you under the tires and roll over you. And so, whenever that happened, it really triggered how much I didn't like any of the confrontation. And so I was glad to move out of that with the financial advisor role at Merrill Lynch. And I've been in that field ever since, going on, 30 plus years now. So.
Okay. I was wondering how that transition comes in. We're going to fill in some gaps because I know we left some gaps in your working career history, but we'll touch that more a little bit later in the business side of the conversation. But okay, so it moved from I want to be a lawyer to, yeah, I don't think so. let me jump over here and work with math instead. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit easier, less confrontational. That's for sure.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, before we continue, I do want to give a quick just thank you to everybody here that shows up on our live chat. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks for being a part of the conversation here today. As we always do, if you have any questions, feel free to try to ask them. If they're not in the context of the moment, I'll try to weave it in a little bit later if I can. If I miss your question, feel free to repeat it, and I'll, again, try to weave it in where it makes sense. But again, quick shout out just to say thanks to everybody. So we got Your Average Player says he'll stop back in tomorrow. Good to see you. We got Stefan in here. Andres Cards, iFOMO. Good to see you, my friend. DJ Gigabyte, Basic Trainer. DJ says, ready to fact check him in real time.
You can't tell your enemies or friends in this hobby at all. I mean, get off. Dan, get off. We don't need you here right now. Go find a friend.
Ivy's in here as well. Ivy says, I closed my shop early for this. Good to have you here, Ivy. Thank you so much.
I think Ivy might be down here by me somewhere, and I've
I've
never taken the time. Ivy, I'm a horrible human being. I must get to Vegas and see your wonderful shop. So count on it.
It's beautiful. Check it out. I haven't seen it in person.
You're 1,000 miles away and you've been there, and I haven't,
No, I haven't been there, but I've at least looked at the pictures.
Okay, all right. Ivy, I'm coming, and that's probably not a good thing. So secure the windows.
Prepare yourself.
Yes.
We got Drew in the house as well. Zard lurking. Weedle's Warehouse. Good to see you as well, my friends. All good. We got Pokey Rip, Sean, R&D's in here. Good to see you, Zach, Alex. Namp 90 is in the house as well. Peak That Shoe, stop by. Thanks for stopping in, Peak. And many, many more. Thanks, guys. Navi Station here. So we're going to go ahead and ask the first question just because I think Peak dropped it in early. So, Peak, looks at this and says, well, how did you two meet? What made you want to have him on? So the meeting is relatively recent, I will say. Now, I've obviously been watching him through his security cameras and, through the blinds when I can at the house. But outside of that, we've actually just recently been having a short conversation leading up to today's podcast. But much like probably many here in the audience, been watching Uncle, here for a long time. So it's been a fun journey to watch. As I've told him directly, and I'll say it here as well. I love the humor. I love his sense of personality, but also what he stands for. He comes in a way that represents, and he's spoken about this himself many times, accountability and, in a sense, trustworthiness. And you can see that in, if you take away the jokes and take away all the humor and fun that happens, you can see that in how he acts, how he responds, and his intention, which I think is probably the biggest part about who people are and what are they actually intending to do, despite what you may perceive. And I think his intentions are true and deep. And so people like that are the kind of people that make this hobby great. And what better way to celebrate that than to have and build a friendship as well but have this beautiful conversation here today. So that's why I wanted to have him on. But I think the second part of this, Dave, was for you. You watch any other Pokemon YouTube content, Dave?
But I do. Before I answer that, I just want you to address maybe one more level of specificity for Colt Pikachu. You can't say people's names. I'm not allowed to. I retract Colt the name, even though everybody knows it's Colt, and we go back to Pikachu. Tell the audience, because there's like at least 3 or 4 people out there at this point in time. Gosh knows they're not for me, but tell them how we actually met, because this goes to intention and trustworthiness and value in the hobby. How did we meet recently? Or how did you reach out to me? I reached out to you and I asked to buy something, I guess on eBay, right? And after a while, it didn't get to me. Whatever was supposed to get to me from you, and I didn't know you at that point, but it didn't make it to my home in the mailing process. And so I reached out to you, and you take it from there.
Yeah. So I fulfill an order. He basically ordered 3, brand new at the time. They were promos that just came out. It was the Iron Leaves, Walking Wake, and one more. I forget what the third one was. Iron Bundle or something like that. And there were 3 promos, and I fulfill the order like I normally do. And I've even told my wife this recently. Like, even when I see a name that I think I know, maybe it's a TCG player in the meta, or it's just somebody in the Pokemon hobby, I try to treat everybody the same. That way, the packaging, what I do, should be equally as good for anybody, whether it's a $1 order or a $100 order. And so I fulfill the order, and I look at the name, but I'm kind of busy. So I'm like, I need to follow up. And I wonder if that's the same David I watch on Coffee Talks, but probably not. Whatever. Let me just fulfill the order. I'll follow up later. And sure enough, he says, hey, I didn't get the cards. It's been like 4 or 5 days. And so sure enough, I check. This is obviously eBay envelope. So tracking doesn't always work, ladies and gentlemen, a news break. But I said, well, you know what? I still haven't confirmed if he is the David we see here today, but you know what? No worries. I apologize for the inconvenience. If you would kindly allow me, I'm happy to ship out just a whole nother set of cards for you, or do you want a full refund? Up to you. He says, please ship me the cards. So I went and shipped them out. I finished the orders maybe a day or 2 later. And I said, hey, I'm just curious. Are you the David Persin from the Coffee Talks podcast? He says, yeah, that's me. And like, oh, it's funny because I have you on my list to talk to people on the podcast that I'm running. Would you be interested? And this is, of course, before he even receives the second attempt on his order. So he may cancel that invite if he does not get his cards. But I'm like, oh, let's give him a shot anyways. And he says, yeah, I'd be happy to support, reach out via IG and let's chat on there. So we navigate eBay's I don't want you to chat off the platform features. And we connect on IG, and we start to navigate what is feels like a decade of trying to get the podcast off the ground here. So
yeah. And we talked about, and the tangent discussion on that is the importance of treating everybody with respect and having good customer service, because it enhances and bedrocks your reputation. And if you don't do that, if you're fighting over something or you don't believe the customer or whatever, that's not going to bode well for the kind of reputation that you have. And so when they say the customer is always right, even if the customer is not right, you almost want to, if from a business building standpoint, and I certainly know you've had a lot of business building people on your podcast, so you have to really treat people with that respect and underlying belief that you're going to do the right thing and take care of people in that moment. So.
Yeah, and I won't dive too deep on this, and this will be the rants of rants. So we'll go on as long as it can possibly go, where it naturally ends, where Dave falls asleep on the desk in front of him. But we talked about this before the podcast, and one of the things I speak a lot about is, it doesn't really matter. Now, granted, when you get into higher numbers, there's a different decision process, but when you're talking about a small order, the customer says, hey, I didn't get it. Many people fear that the whole policy of refunds or returns, it's just make them happy. And if you make the customer happy, they'll likely tell somebody, or maybe order from you again, or just have a great experience, which is what you want. And at the end of the day, you'll go to sleep with a happy heart and a happy mind. And, it's just much better that way. So I fully agree. And he did get his cards, which is why he agreed to come on the podcast. So he did finally get his promos. He said, okay, fine. Now I'll come on. I appreciate you sending those out again. Now I got 2 copies.
Yeah, that's funny. You know me too well. But that's because you chose to send it in an eBay envelope. Next time, track it, and you won't have that kind of repercussions.
You can choose your shipping level if you would like to choose.
What even is that? Yeah, what even is that? I mean, that's your invitation to say you didn't receive anything, but luckily these cards weren't worth anything, so I really don't have the time to worry about it. So, and Justin, had I known this was what this podcast was going to be, we'd have had a long talk about whether or not this was actually going to happen. So, you're welcome. As I noticed, the chat's down to like 4 people again.
Yep.
Okay.
Drop quickly.
Okay. So, Justin, my watching of other podcasts, I don't watch very many. And it's not by design. I realize this is just stupid, but you get
podcast
those.
or
No, this is great. I'm having fun. I just don't never look at my side of the screen. But you look very handsome. Don't take your hat off. So I'm sorry. You could tell that story later if you want to share. If you don't. I don't want to put you out. And I can put a hat on if it makes you feel more comfortable when you take yours off. We'll figure out how it works out. Okay, I got some in a drawer here somewhere. I just don't look good in a hat. So watching podcasts, that you get, for those of you that Apple phones, they give you an update every once in a while. It comes on, it goes, your screen watch time this past week was so many hours a day. So I average about 11 hours a day on my phone. And I don't know if that's good or bad. It feels bad. I feel guilty, and I want to go in a room and, beat myself up, but I am never doing anything except work on that phone. So whether or not it's looking up prices or doing listings or doing something with my basketball organization or writing notes and talking to clients. So I don't have a lot of time to watch podcasts. And I feel bad because, I look at that slew of guests you have on your introduction, and you would think I would know a lot of them. I only know a few. And the ones that I've been kind of forced to watch, and I'm not going to say what that means, but I'm just going to say that sometimes you need to know what's going on beneath the surface just to kind of have your what do they say, your hand on the pulse of the hobby.
Right.
A lot of them have become so negative. It's the Dateline thing where everybody watches, and I watch Dateline, I don't know, we like the reality TV piece of it.
Right.
But it's so negative in that it's always just that, or it's so hyped. And so the hype piece of it is the hobby's falling, the hobby's going up to the moon. Don't buy this, do buy this. You're going to get rich quick. You're never going to make it. And so I'm tired of it. It's just worn me out. And so, I had a teacher when I was a child. I had teachers tell me 2 things that stuck. I don't know why only 2 things out of a billion things stick. One of them said, never drink milk because it's bad for you. All right. So guess what I did? I never drank milk. And then to this day, I'll have milk in a cereal bowl, and that's it. I've never had a glass of milk. So sometimes teachers should watch what they say, because that's the reason I'm about 5'0", because I didn't drink any milk. And of course, my kids are going to the doctor. They're saying, they're trying to be basketball stars. He goes, drink more milk, strong bones. So anyways, that was good advice. And the other one that person said was, never watch the news, because the teacher said, you will be so much happier if you are not out there watching the media highlight so much negativity. Unfortunately, in my profession, which involves taking care of clients and understanding world events and their impact on the stock markets, financial markets, investment policies, etc., I have to watch that stuff. I don't have a choice. But I don't have to watch podcasts that are just, just crazily negative and whatever and hyped up, and and I understand that's what people enjoy, and I give them their due. You watch whatever you like, but for me, most of the time, it's just not something worth spending my time with.
Yeah, I actually don't watch any news unless it's something I need to definitely keep my finger on, to your point, from a pulse perspective. But I spend time in the beginning of my day. I wake up at 3, as I've told you before. So I wake up at 3. I make my coffee, I meditate, I do some, let's say, vision practices, just kind of what I want to create for the day. How do I want to be? What's the kind of person I want to put into the world? And I do that before I have any input from a TV or a phone or a computer or anything. So by the time, let's call it 3:45, whatever the case is, rolls around, I'm ready to tackle whatever the day kind of throws at me. I usually fail, but hey, I tried. So it's a yeah, it starts me off at least on a good thought. It's a good intention. Good intention as we go back to intentions. But yeah,
Yeah.
fully
I
agree.
mean,
Fully agree.
that's fantastic. I mean, in the discipline to do that every day, it takes discipline to really be successful. Routines make you successful.
Yep.
Focus make you successful. Let's just say they don't. I'm not going to say they make you successful, but they certainly
Give
heighten
opportunity.
the
Yep.
likelihood of you being successful. And if they do nothing more than just focus, which is so imperative to as a precursor for success, those are great practices. So yeah, I have nowhere near that level of discipline, but I think that's fantastic. I have a really I have a unique mind, and I have no arrogance or ego about myself. Which if people don't know me by now, they don't figure it out. So I'm not complimenting my mind. It could be the worst facet of me, but I don't run my mind, which is an interesting little tidbit. My mind runs me. So I let my mind do what it does, and whatever it tells me to do, it just come to it. It just pops in, and I could have forgotten something for 12 days, but I promise on the 13th day it will re-enter my mind. I trust my mind that it will come back, and I get it done. So I'm very blessed. I'd say there's like an angel on my shoulder, in the way life has gone with me being able to navigate through uncertainties and decisions and opportunities that sometimes you don't know what you're going to do. And I just kind of, I guess a lot of people, maybe pray about it and stuff. And, I just kind of let my mind tell me which way to go. So
It's funny you mention it that way. I'm curious, while we're here in this tangent, what do you allow emotion to do?
I don't know that I don't, I guess emotion wouldn't necessarily be front and center. Emotion, when you say that, it brings up 2 points in my mind. And the first one is never make a decision when you're emotional. So it's
Good
critically
advice.
important
Yeah.
to have that cool down period, wait a day or 2 or 3 or 4 before you write the email, you
Hit
make the
send. Yeah.
phone call, you make a decision. So that definitely is going to take a back seat for a moment in time. But then, someone like me who's overly empathetic to people, to almost like, I mean, I'm telling you what I'm doing now. This is the stupidest thing ever. And this is just ridiculous. I glance over, watch my eyes, and I see the chat's 54. By the way, I don't know what that means, but that's a number, right? And I'm thinking, have you said something so dumb just now that it's knocked it down to 45? So that's literally what my mind is doing. It's going, don't ruin it. Don't be stupid. Don't say something bad that's going to make people not want to see you and hang out with Justin. So I am very empathetic, and I do understand the emotional consequences of decisions and how they impact others. I'm not very concerned about it for me. I'm tough enough to deal with whatever's got to be dealt with. My motto is figure it out. When
Yep.
you find something that's troubling you, you say, I'm going to figure it out. And you begin to pursue all the different alternatives. But yeah, I mean, underneath it all, understanding what I would do and how that would be emotionally, positive or detrimental to people in my life, that's important. And it's one of the reasons that recently, and I don't want to bump too far ahead, but I've mentioned to you that very recently I've sold a tremendous amount of my excess inventory, because whether or not I wanted to do that or not, it was the right decision for my family and I, because as we get up in age, I need to make sure we're safe. And I need to know my wife, who's stuck by me through this journey of 30 some years, is going to be okay. And knows I've taken care of her, because I know emotionally that's important to her.
Yep. Yep. Very much so. Yeah, and we will touch on that a little bit more. But kind of going back to, I guess, the core of the question, I was wondering if you felt at any time emotion was in control. Because if your mind is driving you, right, in the way that you phrased it, does emotion jump in there and take the steering wheel sometimes? And obviously, we're human, so it does happen from time to time. But as long as you're aware, and which it sounds like you very much are, and you put that hopefully in the back seat, then you can say, "Well, I'll send that email maybe tomorrow."
Yes. Yeah.
Let me not hit send today, but I'll write it. But I'll review it again tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I've done that a tremendous number of times. And you told me you were going to do this. You said, if you don't answer the questions, I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to ask again and again and again. So here we go. Iteration 2. What you doing
Right.
with emotion? We already got through this. Okay. No emotion is not
Let's
in
move
control.
on. Let's move on,
Yes.
Dave.
Okay. Okay, fine. But no, emotion is never in control. It's there. And sometimes it is horrific, but I bite my tongue and I make sure it doesn't, these are all the rules I've learned in my life. We say, and this is an interesting one, make sure what you do or say can never end up, and the way it was stated to me years ago, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal one day. So we could change Wall Street Journal to the New York Post or whatever you like, the Atlantic, et cetera. And for those of you that are watching, we're not going to talk politics because I already agreed to that. But one of the most controversial things out there is there's a pick, Mr. Hegseth, for one of the positions right now. And Justin, if you're not watching the news, I don't know if you know this or not, but basically his mom wrote him an email 7 years ago. And it said, "You're a womanizer. You're horrible. I can't believe you do this to women." And now they're trying to overcome it as he's, going to be, they think he won't get through because of this email in his past. So this is an example of when you write something and you don't bite your tongue and pull it back, it can come out and completely impact a person's life. So it's an important lesson to let emotions kind of subside before you take that next course of action.
And as we always do, ladies and gentlemen, we dive deep right from the beginning, and we just swim through the waves of the ocean of the conversation. And I absolutely love it because I couldn't agree more. I often phrased it, especially in my corporate career, it was more along the lines of, I won't send an email that I'm not ready for anybody to read. As long as anybody can read this email and I'm okay with it, then I'll hit send. And that's the way I've approached it. So and people are always like, "Why do you take so much time to write your email? And you're always so formal." And it's because that I want to make sure if somebody reads this and I'm gone, they don't see this and use that in a way that could be misinterpreted. It's also not making sure that I'm being extremely rude or emotional about it, because if I'm that way, then I don't want everybody else to read it. So it keeps me in check as well. If I can't send this to everybody, then I don't need to send it. Yeah.
It's funny when you say that, because I think we just briefly touched on in just a personal conversation about AI a little bit. And, and maybe we didn't, but you look familiar to another guy I talked to within the last week or so. So I'm not really sure, Justin. But anyways, just go with it. Act like something's going on here. Good. So I
nod
wonder
my
how
head.
you employ AI in that situation, right? Because AI is supposed to rewrite these things for you, but how does it employ, like if you were really mad and you wanted to write a letter to somebody and say, boy, that wasn't good stuff, how could you use AI, or how would you be dangerous to use AI in that circumstance to craft that letter for you?
It's funny you say that, because I was part of a team, leading a team actually, that we were building a new social media platform. And this was in the midst of social media, in my opinion, personal opinion, being a destruction of many people's attention spans, obviously fueling the car crash and everybody stop and stare. And part of what we were trying to do is present this in a way that could bring a healthy conversation back to the sphere and hopefully change or shift the way social media was going. But to the question you're asking, is there's actually something called a sentiment around this. So you can actually pass the message as you write it, and I get a sentiment score back. And what we were doing in this process was we were actually saying, before you send this, if the sentiment reached this threshold, we're going to say, hey, it looks like you may be upset, you may be angry. Do you want to save this message for tomorrow? And I'll just put it in your draft folder and you can come back and check it later. They could, of course, force it and just send it anyways, but at least it gave pause. And it says, hey, here's what we're noticing. Are you sure? And people may have hated
That's
that
amazing.
feature, but it was an attempt to try to solve exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. It just that'll be my pearl of wisdom for this evening if you say nothing else that makes any sense at all. So I'm relying on that one.
Well, you
Sentiment.
know, we got two things from your childhood. We can maybe add a third today, and you know, I'll call that a win. I'll call it a
Thank
win.
you. Thank you. Everything's a win at this point. I woke up this morning.
And I didn't say it to you like this before we started, David, but obviously I think it's very clear at this point. I enjoy how we interact, and so I'm going to play with that. We're going to go back and forth and just have a good time and conversation. And obviously, I mean nothing ill by it, but I just want to have fun with you the same way that I think we're having fun with each other. So
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm happy with things, so we're good.
I do want to go back to the older topic of how we met in our eBay. Mr. Walrus here, always showing me love, says Wonder once drew me a picture, hyped it up, lost it, or he never sent it. Basically, good to see he treats others better than his.
Ah,
Yeah,
goodness, that's funny.
so you know, I did draw him a picture of Mimikyu, which was his favorite Pokemon. We were at a restaurant with the family and the kids, and they had this paper, like where if you drew on it, it actually revealed like the rainbow colors behind it. And we had just gotten Paldean Face released at the time, so we were opening it with the kids, and I drew him a picture from the box. I said, "I'm gonna send this to you." We lost it. we lost the picture. I drew him a new one and I sent it out. But now here's what he leaves out of the story is he left it laying in a big pile of mail that he never bothered to open until I called him out on it. He asked somebody else to go open it for me. He said, "Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah, whatever, thanks." So as you can see, there's always two sides of the coin. So good to
Two
see you,
sides.
Walrus.
Two
Yeah,
sides,
good to see you, my
exactly. That's funny.
friend. We got one more here from Peak. A question for both of you. How do you navigate finding trustworthy people in the community? Advice for best practices to build these relationships in Pokemon and in life.
You want to go
Should we go
first?
first?
Because every time I go first, you just agree with me, and I need you to have something that's coming out of your own mouth with your own opinion. Go
I
first.
prefer not to. It's my podcast. You can do that on yours.
Okay, fair enough. Although he did say, the guy that's writing it, I won't say his name. I've said it 100 times already. He did say question for both of you, but I'll go ahead.
Should we talk at the same time? Would that be?
It's pretty much what goes on when nobody's listening to me anyways, so do whatever. In fact, our chat's down to like one person now, somebody who, is restless trying to go to sleep. Don't look. Stop looking, David. Okay, I'm just kidding. Here's the deal. A lifetime of dealing with people and wisdom for me. And again, it's all that I have, folks. If you said, David, what do you like about yourself? Don't like the way I look, always had self-esteem problems, spent my 20s, never looked in a mirror in my 20s. I swear to God, it's not a joke. All these things that, weight loss issues forever. So the only thing I like, honestly, is my mind. And I appreciate my mind. So what that does is I can usually tell in 5 minutes if someone's trustworthy. It's how they talk. It's how they listen. It's whether or not they're asking for things for themselves or for a win from two people involved. And, a win-win kind of situation. It's how fast they want to culminate a deal versus understanding things that are worthy sometimes take time. It's understand the myriad solutions that you can find in any particular situation and not just settling for A or B. So when I did go to law school and they said, hey, everybody thinks it's A or B, but they said, you want to find the most persuasive people on the planet, they're your kids. And they say, but what about this? But what about this? But if you didn't do that, I could do that. What if you give me this? There's no A and B. There's A through 1,000, Z's and on and on. Yep. It's basically the unknown from the series that just gets to 26 or 28, and then you go to letters. No one knows. I didn't know what I'm talking about. I know nothing. I saw the cards once in my binder. They're pretty cool cards. So you have to understand that, some of the best deals and people I've met have come to, as long as I could determine that they were caring enough about making a good deal, I'm one of the few people that will actually look past idiosyncrasies They could be screaming me on the phone. They don't do this, but it could happen. Somebody goes, "You don't get it," or whatever. I want to think about why they're screaming and what are they worried about? Because as long as I feel like they're a caring individual, I can get by personality. You know, I have a son that's autistic. He never, very infrequently does he smile. He doesn't say thank you. But I don't think he's not well intentioned. He just doesn't gain some of those skills. So you have to look past all of that. You have to get down in the character, see what people are talking about. And, you know, usually you can figure it out. If you aren't ready to do that, you're not at that point, then you've got to let trial and error be your guide. You know, we have a saying that's fail fast. If you're going to fail, that's okay, but fail fast. So make the mistakes and learn and say, what did I misread in that situation? You talked about, Justin, can I call you Justin? Because I'm saying your name. I'm just going to call you Wonderkind. Pokemon Wunderkind.
It's funny. I am German.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So there it works out just fine. Boy, who knew? See, I read that in 4 minutes, or me or my mind, I don't know. So when you're talking to people and you're trying to figure it out, if you make a mistake, go back and evaluate it and take accountability. That's what you said. My 2 tenets are take accountability and be transparent. So I take accountability. I screwed that up. I didn't read where that was going. I missed these 3 signals, and I'm never going to let that happen again. When you really fail is when you let the same mistake happen over and over again.
Yeah. Well, David, he said it all. I agree. Great, thanks.
That's nice. What I love is the interactive nature of the podcast. That's fine. Okay, great. Next question, please. Colt,
Yes.
anything else? Colt.
Hurry, put something in.
That's right. I'm telling you, I'll my protein shake. Here it is. We've been on almost like 4 hours now. I'm finishing my protein shake, and then
So
I have one word for the wife on the phone. I'm going to open the phone. I'm going to text beer, and she's coming in with the cold glass. Okay, so here we go.
I love it. But no, I will comment a few things, and you did touch on some of the points, and I think for me, at least in the way that I articulate it, it is going back to somebody's intention. So in your case, they're yelling at you on the phone, but that doesn't mean that's their intention. To your point, like, well, what is it that they're concerned about? So when you look at, and for me, I'm a very good read. I was always and this is the same story I know you share, and we'll talk more about this in a second when we can stop ranting on unrelated topics. We are looking at the point where we're sitting there as kids in our room, and in your case, you're fulfilling the binder set of your baseball, basketball cards, and you were completely satisfied in doing that. And I was the same way with cards in the beginning, drawing, music later on. But for whatever reason, that allowed me, as I got back into interaction and where I was forced to be in school or other places, I could really read people really well. And I think part of it was because I was very quiet with myself in solitude a lot. And so I had time to think, I had time to process, I had time to just absorb. And in doing so, when I was around the other inputs, I think, at least in the way that I see it, I was very hypersensitive to what those inputs were. So when somebody came at me with a certain energy or a certain intention, I could really feel that very, very quickly. So I was really good at reading people. So to the same point that you said, like within just a minute or two, I can tell somebody's intentions. I will do my best sometimes to overlook the idiosyncrasies and say, let's pull all those things to the side. And again, who are they as a person? There's many different types of people, and we won't go into names, but it definitely can still be boiled down to if they have a good intention and they have a good heart, no matter how they may try to transpose or portray that into their conversation or into their physical body actions. I try to make sure that I look at the deeper side of that. And when you do that, it takes away all the noise. It takes away all the things that often are confusing. And that's why the conversations on social media go to, in a handbasket, because you can't really get a lot of that. So that in-person interaction is always the best. So And to maybe say it slightly differently at the end is I always try to trust first, unless there's some massive red flags that are just going off and says, okay, hey, you need to back away immediately. Outside of those scenarios, I'll give them the opportunity because I think most people are sincerely good people. There's very few ill-intentioned people out there. And of course, as soon as I see it, much like my conversation about shipping earlier, okay, hey, if they are trying to rip me off and I can detect it, okay, fine. I'll block them. Like, we're done. I'll move on. Next customer, and I'll give my time where it's probably better served. So when in doubt, I'll just give some trust and let that rope slide out just a little bit. And if they pull that rope in the wrong way, then I know it and I would just cut it off.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I think one of the things that makes it more difficult in some of these circumstances is the personality quirks. And I'll just talk to one
Yeah.
very quickly. A lot of folks are more salesy in the way they deal with
Yeah.
things. You've got a lot of YouTubers that are really, really hype, and they have thousands and thousands of views. And I just think it's harder for some people who are watching them to really determine with confidence if those people are good people or not. I don't know those people, so I make no commentary on them whatsoever. I'm just saying that I do believe that it's inherently a bit more difficult because sometimes, in a sense, they're almost acting. And you're acting the part of the circus, whatever that person is that runs the circus. And so you're involving everybody in it and going from there. So I think that makes it more difficult. But I think you have to have confidence in yourself. And I'll turn it back. I'm trying to impart some life lessons along the way for people who are kind enough to be with us on the podcast. So I know some of this isn't perfectly relevant to Pokemon, but had joined Merrill Lynch, and I'm starting out my career as a financial advisor. And I felt like I wasn't going to make it because I wasn't salesy. So I'm doing training, and they're like, you know what? You need to be doing this. You need to be doing this. You need to be doing this. That's how the sales guys were doing it that way. And I had a coach once tell me, you know what, David, being introverted can be a tremendous relationship builder. Yeah. Because what people will figure out about you is that you care. And that you listen to them when they speak and you understand what it is they're looking for. And you ask the kind of questions that bring out the goals, the dreams, the fears, the concerns. And so I think that, the same things you talked about, Justin, as a kid, being hypersensitive and being able to watch and feel and listen, it's all part of the same kind of personality traits that some of us are maybe we don't have as much confidence in at the time we first are blessed with them in whatever way, but you learn to accept them and realize they can really be strengths over the course of time.
Yeah, turning those into superpowers, essentially. And that's I think you've done that very well in your career and your time, and obviously here in this space as well. And to your point, like that type of personality has garnered you a wealth of relationships that I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure you never fathomed that would be the way it is here today. Fast forward 20 years later. And I don't know if you could even compare it and say, hey, was it the same for me when I was in sports? Did I have this same type of bond and relationship? Maybe you want to speak to that. What's that comparison of relationships in sports industry, cards that is, versus what you see here in Pokemon? Do you see a big difference?
It was different in the sense that, number one, I was much younger then, and so I wouldn't have appreciated the relationships as much. Okay. And number two, back then it was much more fast paced. So when I was in the business of a collector as a youngster, I was just collecting cards. When I went into business in the sports card industry and opened up National Sports Card Investments in the late 80s, we were doing, I became one of the first 13 distributors in the country for Upper Deck.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that was absolute chaos. I had boxes, hundreds of cases left on pallets on my driveway, inside my garage, in my living room, and people coming with cash. You knew 3/4 of them were probably laundering something, but you're not going to ask questions. They're buying the cards. It's not my business where the cash came from. And so they're just, so it was a different time, and it was very short lived. Okay. By 1992, 2 or 3 years later, we were going through kind of a very down period economically in the country. And there was now too many, not only were people not purchasing things, but sports cards had turned into way too many companies. You went from Topps, Fleer and Donruss, Sportflix, Score, everybody was coming out.
Everybody came in.
Yeah. And so for me, it just isn't, there was no maturity to it that I could bring in my life and enjoy. It was just too fast paced.
Got a nice compliment directly here for you, Mr. David. Uncle Dave is rich in life, Pokemon, and has that Richard aging ability. Looking good, Dave.
Yeah, Richard Gere aging ability. So that is a very kind compliment, and I really appreciate it. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I don't. You're going to obviously send me something afterwards, asking me for something for free, and I don't blame you. Okay, that's the way I would do it. I'm going to start with a compliment too, but I will tell you, as a friend, as a kind of uncle-ish figure, you're going to want to have your eyes checked early and often. Okay, because what you're seeing is definitely not Richard Gere like. So do something about that, because I don't want you to have like macular degeneration at a very young age. You don't deserve that. You deserve better than that. So
it's harder to enjoy the Pokemon cards when you can't see them quite as well, right? So
it's crazy. Good luck grading them when you can't see them. That's a heck of a thing. So yeah.
But getting it maybe back here to a little bit of Pokemon. I know that your journey in that space started with the tablet, 2004, sitting in bed and making that poor purchase that you begged for forgiveness from your wife for, buying those 2 collections. And one of the things I heard you say as you went through that, buyer's remorse and regret, and once obviously they were being delivered, you said, well, I got to turn this into something. You started your journey into research. You actually landed then a couple of collections, like 2 or 3, one of which you bought for about $7,000, and at the time, and that was still within 2004-ish time frame, I believe.
Right.
And when you did so, you happened to land one of the best purchases that you had ever had thus far in that Pokemon space. Now, granted, it was a short time, but you did understand what you had. And in that moment, you somehow made a decision upon yourself that, well, if I got this, it's very special. I have to continue. I can't let it fall from here. So let me clearly spend the next 20 years collecting Pokemon cards. You spoke about that early success in all seriousness as one of the reasons that you probably even continued the journey. Would you do it again? Would you make that iPad purchase of $700 on those 2 complete collections and go through that journey again? Or would you maybe change paths?
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded question, so let's sort of be upfront about it, in the sense
Sure.
that my journey has been filled with so much enjoyment, so much success, so much of amazing. I mean, this collection is one of a kind through a myriad of different things that have come together. But that first purchase was a bit of that what I talk about, that angel on my shoulder. I don't know why some things happen. I don't have a preconceived notion. I tell the family, as unfortunately I'm at an age now where many friends are dying around me, friends, clients, every few months, someone drops dead. And so I say I've had such a blessed life because of this angel on my shoulder, that life's going to be pretty dramatically bad when it ends. It's just going to be like boom and it's over, because you just can't live this blessed a life. So it's a humorous take, but there's some serious in it too, in the sense that, yeah, who knows why, I have a compulsiveness to my purchasing at times. I mean, people saw a post of mine a while back. And by the way, folks, although I've acquired some wealth over time, through the years, I have not been wealthy. I mean, it's been tactical financial advisor type of spending. But one night I bought getting older, and you probably remember the post. I bought a BMW i8 online, sight unseen, you know, and oh, well, it was $150,000 car and it was 95,000 or something. And I said, ship it in from LA. Like, what does that? I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, I think I drove the car 4 times. I said, honey, I'm too afraid to drive it. I'll crash. And she drove it. And, you know, so I do some things pretty compulsively at times. Maybe it's a mood, maybe it's a depression. I don't know. And so I did buy those sets and I did start the research. And because of that, I did very shortly thereafter acquire the collection. And the collection was so one of a kind at that point in time, in the beginning of the hobby, that there were things in it. And I then started saying, let me find out what else was out there. And then as I did that research, every time I bought something, I made a mistake. I paid too much. I didn't realize there was 17 more things. I thought I was buying the last thing of what I needed, only to find there was another 15, 20, 25 different items. So, but because I have done that and I've gone through, even to this day where you think you have it all, and then you've got at DJ Gigabyte, Dan Norton, at DJ Gigabyte, who says, can I have the credit card again? I found 3 more cards that are one of a kind. So it created the momentum to carry me down a path to where I am today. And what's remarkable for me, and it's not again, I don't have arrogance. I don't care. It's just from the outside perspective, from that 30,000 foot perspective looking down. It's remarkable to think that I own something that's a part of the largest hobby, the largest, franchise in the world of any kind. And it's one of a kind. Like, it's not duplicatable in the sense that between the trophies and the things that people told me I was stupid to buy. You're dumb to buy that. That's never going to turn into anything. You're wasting $3,000 or $5,000. And I wasn't buying it for investment. I was buying it to fill a hole in a binder.
Complete, yeah.
Correct. And so it didn't matter what they were saying, and it still doesn't matter. It's different now. So boy, when I just go on runs, who even knows why? I just stop talking. Stop talking. Okay, sorry. So now the last couple of years, the $5,000, $10,000, $14,000 number 1 trophy card I bought from a German girl, 5, 7, 8 years ago. Dan, weigh in and tell us when it was. That now it's $100,000 for a number 1. And I buy it because of the obligation I feel to the hobby. And that's just stupid, but that's who I am. It's like everybody counts on me to have all the cards, and I need to have all the cards, or I'm going to let somebody down. And so I buy the cards because I'm fortunate enough to have enough money at this point that I can, but also because I don't want to see a hole in that binder where there isn't a hole going back from 2004 to now. I don't want to let people down. So it's a little bit of chaotic inside the mind stuff, but that's what it is.
And allow me to first maybe retract. My questions aren't meant to be loaded in any type of a negative way. They're to probe the conversation and unlock maybe parts that we haven't got to hear, or maybe perspectives that we haven't heard you convey before.
We're going to get a ChatGPT email in the next 2 days once the emotions settle down on sentiment, and you're going to hear my frustrations with your questions. But please go ahead.
In the meantime, one of the things that you just spoke about there, and it's actually a perfect segue, David, is this, and tell me if it's not, but I think this was a self-appointed sense of responsibility, because you never committed to anybody. Says, hey, look, everybody, I'm going to be your reference point for all the English cards. Count on me. I got this. I won't let you down. Like, you never made such a commitment, at least in the beginning, and maybe you paraphrase things along the journey. But why did you take that on as that obligation, as you put it? Why would you take that on with no outside force?
I don't know. I mean, it started back in 2004 when I saw what I had and I started buying. At that time, after a few years, I saw that I was able to obtain these cards, and I was doing it, and I was building the collection. And it was self-instilled. It's never been any other way. It was never an outside type of responsibility.
Right.
I don't have a great answer. I think it goes back to my nature of, I really don't like to let people down, and that should not be why I make decisions. And none of you should make decisions. You should make decisions in your own best interests. But I remember when the pandemic happened, and I remember that I had been watching some videos, things were slower, kind of we were locked down. And I started watching some videos about putting some podcasts, putting some, not podcast, what do we call them? Putting some videos online.
Oh, right.
And so right before I did that, I said to myself, you're a farce. You're as from the movie Elf, you sit on a throne of lies. And so what do I mean? Well, I thought, you don't have every card, because you've spent the last 18 months, 2 years in life, and you haven't bought all the cards. And so I needed all the promos. I mean, people don't understand. I have every single jumbo card that's ever been made. It's one of the most impressive things you can look at when you open a binder of hundreds and hundreds of jumbo cards. It's worth absolutely nothing. People would laugh at me. No one likes jumbo cards. They're basically, your nephew that, stomps you on the foot every 5 minutes, and you'd say you kick them out of there. But it's so incredible to open that binder and look through it. And so I basically just went online, and I started building checklists, and I filled in every single hole before I made my first video, because I felt like I would be lying to the community if I hadn't filled all those spots. So it's just a quirk of who I am as that completionist, and as trying to be true and authentic and transparent and real about what I'm doing.
I can only in part imagine part of this, and if you would allow me to articulate this slightly differently, but just before I do, Dan came in and says 2019 is when you bought from Kaya, the German girl. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it, buddy. I appreciate you still staying up long enough to watch. So yeah,
good to see you, Dan.
Dan knows stuff. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, he knows a lot. And here's what I mean by this is, I think that if I was to attempt to put myself in your shoes, and going back to that, trying to see how somebody feels and understanding from their point of view. When I've gotten certain items from Rusty, for example, and I've sat there and I've looked at these items, they're pieces of history. And I look at this and I'm like, I can't believe that these are here, one, in my possession. Like, I'm just super grateful to be holding this piece of history in this moment of time. But then I think about all the things connected around it, and whether it's league play, and we're looking at some of the stickers for the gym leaders, and just so many cool things like I've just never seen anybody have. And I can imagine you receiving such a collection that just, in a sense, blew your socks off, and you're like, I can't believe I have this, and now that I do, what do I do with this? Like, I can't just let it sit here. I can't just sell it for $23 and and move about my business. There's something with this that I have to take some type of a self-pronounced with. And I can, again, just a glimmer, but I can imagine what that would be like if you had received, or if I had received such a collection, in 2004. Yeah.
And we all have personality quirks, right? And we go back to those little nuances that make us who we are. And clearly, for somebody who started collecting cards in some fashion at 6, 7, 8 years old, somebody who then, turned that into a business in the, in the early 20s, mid 20 age range, mid 20s, late 20s. And then I went through, I went through this right here in the end of my HE double hockey sticks. I went through that in the end of my sports card experience, because, being held up at gunpoint, being, ripped off through the warehouse walls, counterfeiting stuff when we would open packs and they had been resealed. So the steroid era. So I was so jilted by all of that I think there was part of me that never lost the collecting bug. I didn't necessarily know it at the time. So I bought 2 sets. There we start again. We move on down the path. We buy a collection, and I'm stuck right back in it again. But the innocence of the hobby was what appeals to me. And
Okay.
so now I don't have anybody that can be banned for steroids. Although I got to tell you, Charizard, something's going on with that guy. But notwithstanding Charizard, right? Or or somebody. So it's innocent, and it really resonated with me in some way. And yes, I don't know how I even knew that early on, how blessed I've been to buy the collection. I really, but somehow I really did. There were just enough things in it that were unique that to this day are just a handful of a kind that you say, wow, I figured it out early, and I was able to leverage that for success moving forward.
I love it. Yeah, sometimes it's those unspoken natures of something that calls within us that are perhaps the loudest things, or the loudest voice that nobody hears. If you would allow me to be so confusing as to say that phrase.
No, I think that's a fantastic way to put it. I really do. Yeah.
And as I listen to your journey over the years, David, keeping on the context of collecting, and by the way, Peak, I do see your question. I'm going to tie it in. I actually have that as a kind of a general topic. So kindly allow me just a few minutes, sir, and I'll get back to that. In the beginning, you could not enjoy your collection, and I'm paraphrasing your words loosely, but I'm busy. I'm basically just acquiring. I'm buying. I got life happening. I'm work, the family, the kids, and coaching. I don't have time to enjoy it. You said I'll do it when I retire. But what I've noticed, if I look now at the past, year or two, maybe 3, I have to look back and see exactly. But it seems that you're finding great ways to actually enjoy what you've been acquiring all this time. And maybe I want to pose it first, and then I'll chime in maybe with some thoughts of mine as well. How do you enjoy your collection today? Because it's so big, it's so massive. It's got to be difficult. You have things not in easy to reach locations. Sometimes they're somewhere else. How do you enjoy what you've done so far?
So now I need a box of tissues. We're at the Oprah moment, and I need something on the eyes right now. You have
hit send to your wife.
Yeah, it's time, isn't it? Yeah, good point. Get the beer in quick. It was actually Barbara Walters who made people cry every interview. And folks, these guys, anybody that's not over the age of 50, she's gone. So that's what happens. I don't like the answer to this question because it's just not a good answer. But you want the authentic me, and you said to bring the authentic me, so I'm just going to be that person. All
right.
I am still not enjoying the collection. Okay. I can say on a relative basis, I am enjoying it more than in the past.
Okay.
Because every day I post.
That's what I was going to get to.
Yes. Exactly. And so I've committed. So here's what we've done again. I feel obligated to post because I'm posting. People tell me they enjoy it. That's very kind of them. My followers have moved up 5,000, over when I started doing this a year or so ago. So I know people are enjoying it. And guess what? I post, and then I look and I go, doggone it, 120 people like that. So instead of just enjoying the post and letting it be there, I look at the one that I did the next day and it's 400. The next one's 800. So they like this better. They like this better. That takes more work. I need to put this. I pull down every binder. I'm pulling out 20. Luckily, I figured out a faster way to do it by using eBay. I'm going through, I'm picking I'm picking off every Pikachu card that starts from the top of eBay. And now I can write it on a piece of paper. Then I go to the binders, then I pull them out. Then I go do the posting, then I come back, then I got to put them all back. So that's an hour plus probably every day, minimal. So it's work, but I want people to be happy with what I'm doing. I want them to enjoy it. It never comes back to me, unfortunately. I wish it did. It just doesn't. And then you think, well, I'm going to enjoy it. And here's what happens. You start to pull cards, you're doing a Gollum post. I didn't know what Gollum is until, and by the way, I didn't know what Gollum was until I post. So that's why I'm enjoying it more. Okay. I can see some rolled up guy or something, right? So is that the guy that's rolled up with the outside? Anyways, I don't know. Somebody said, I
It's
think
kind of like a turtle. It looks like kind of
I
like
like
a
a
turtle.
turtle. Yeah. Okay. So so I learned what Gollum is after this much time with my collection by doing a post. I will remember that now because somebody said, love the rolled up turtle guy. So that's the good news. But the bad news is I go to start putting the cards back. Something's missing. Something's missing. What? My promo binder? Nothing's ever been missing. It's all full, literally. So I look and wait a minute, 60. Dan, listen to me. We got to figure this out. So 67 is there and 69's in the next, and there's no 68. Well, that can't be missing. So where is it? So what's happened is there's so much chaos in this many cards that I begin to feel like I've lost 1 and 2 and here and there. That's part of the problem. So now my mind goes, I've got to go back and catalog every set again. By the way, Dan, that's what we have to do. So anyways, keep watching. And then you have Dan out there at DJ Gigabyte because he's a good guy, guys. He knows more about the hobby than anybody. He basically, then he comes up and he says, by the way, there's 642 more cards you need because we have to complete the prize pack set, and we've got the league set, and we've got this set, and we've got the Asian promos, and we forgot to get this, and there's 4 new league promos that came out of nowhere. So it's a constant filling holes in the binder so that I can make sure that the collection remains complete as it can be with whatever resources I have and with whatever cards are available. So I'll finish this by saying this. As you get to this point in life, 63, and I mean, it's just what it is. I'm not trying to be dramatic or anything, but people really are dropping. I mean, my brother-in-law lost a good friend, and he and his wife said, gosh, we don't want to drop dead at 60 like our good friend. He just went into the hospital. Went to the doctor. They did the test on your heart, and he had nothing wrong. He had nothing wrong. He had a test on his heart. They said, you have 100% blockage. You're not leaving the hospital. You'll be dead in 2 days. So this is what's going on underneath our bodies, and we don't know if you don't check it. So I'm at a point now where what do I do? Part of me is like, find someone who can maintain the collection so that it can go on to somebody who has that same mentality. Everybody tells me not possible because no one has the financial wherewithal or desire to do that. You'll have to break it all up. Or I said to my wife tonight, maybe I just keep going and doing this. Maybe I do this till I'm 95 and drop off, or 90 or whenever I hope I live to, because that's when I can enjoy it. That's when I don't have as much obligation and I don't have as much going on. My work career will be retired. Right. My basketball coaching hopefully will be wound down to some degree, and there will be more time to really enjoy it. Yeah.
Okay. So, because I really thought the IG post was you actually enjoying what you had and just sharing that enjoyment. I didn't realize it was actually the inverse, where you were doing that as part of sharing your collection. You had some enjoyment in it, but again, it was another sense of a different type of an obligation in a sense.
And I learned from the IG posts, which is why I like to do them. That's the positive. I learn, where are these arts coming from? I learned, like everybody thinks I know nothing about my collection, guys. So I didn't understand, why is there not a big name Pikachu card other than one gold star? Because they're small players, right? You have to, I guess Pikachu gets built into somebody, it gets built into Raichu, or I don't know how it all works.
Yeah, but you got it.
Yeah. So I have to start differently. I can't start for hollows there. I have to go to legendary collection, find a reverse hollow, and let it all branch out from there for the smaller cards. So I love learning, lifelong learning, and I love being able to continue to learn about it. And that's what the posting is really helping me do. So I've enjoyed that a lot.
Here we go. Somebody says, is this your grandpa? Daddy Donkey Kong.
Say yes. At least make me seem like I'm relevant to somebody.
Yes. He is my grandpa. Shake your head if you're in trouble. We're at least at a sweet point where I at least now think I know exactly what you still need, so we don't have any more surprises. Well, the surprise is Pokemon, right, Dan? So I mean, it's what they release and the little nuances therein. But out of anybody, well done, sir. Well done. Mine's water, but cheers.
I did that just for Dan so he could understand. No, Dan, other things have gone missing. And I'm telling you, it's not the house cleaners. They don't go in this room. So.
But if you're going to have anybody on your team to help you find those gaps and nuances, Dan's the guy, obviously. He is the guy to help you find everything. Which is actually another great point that I was wondering. And I know you don't have to give like a firm number, but I think it's interesting for the people in the audience here is amassing this collection. Obviously, it's taken you, 20 years, right?
Yep.
And in doing so, you've had so many people help you along the way. So many people. And I know I'm throwing a dart at the board with my eyes closed and probably blinding, several people with one throw. But how many people do you think has taken you to help get to this point? If you had to put a number on it.
You see, it's hard because of the interpretation of the question. That's the issue.
Well, direct, like people that you've directly worked with, not the 2-3 tier down. Like how many people have you been talking to that are directly talking to you to help source the cards? I mean, I know there's a couple of key ones, Dan obviously being one of them, but if you had to put a number on the immediate circle around you that's helped you accomplish this, what would that rough number be?
Justin, it's pretty small.
Oh, really?
It's really small. Yeah, it really is. It might only be 4, 5, or 6.
Okay.
It's their ability to then branch out for me. And definitely through the years, because I don't know how you address that from the standpoint of how do I say thank you to world champions who consented to sell me their cards, to the David Cohens and Kayla, the German gal. And, but then I don't talk to the German gal unless there's a translator that's willing to get in between and someone at the Worlds venue who was willing to help access the trainer. So there's been tremendous number, the kindness of people and the willingness to help. They could have been people who said, we don't want to help this guy. We want to do it ourselves, or we're jealous, or we're whatever. So I have to be, eternally grateful to every one of those people. I mean, and some of them are just gone. They're no longer around. They're no longer in the hobby. They might not even be with us. In hotel rooms at a world championship, where a Japanese player consented to sell me a card, couldn't speak a bit of the language. There was no iPad programs at that time. And I had a Japanese gentleman who all he wanted to do was help me. And he was there with a crew and he spoke both languages. And he came up and did the whole transaction, went back and forth. To world champions from Canada who said, we will not sell you our card. It's not going to happen. And then all they did is they milked me for more money. Okay. They just kept raising the price until it was at that point outrageous, but I wanted the card. So I look at that as a blessing, right? Not a negative, because they still chose to sell me their card. They didn't have to do that. So there's a lot of people like that on the fringes. There's people now like Ruben, I think it's Felipe Pereira. I'm going to mess up his name, but he's like recently. He's like almost Dan's counterpart and helps me in Spain, Portugal area, and buying cards from Chile and all those. I bought from all of there, and even he's helped me with some of the Asians who in what he's done is he's been invaluable in getting people to understand my reputation, and that David's going to want the card up front to make sure it's in his hands, but he will then pay you the 50,000 or whatever the dumb number is that you deserve to get for that card and you agreed to take. That's a lot for someone to trust someone enough to send a card across the world. So that's how it's been. And of course, I have to say it because I think it's important, just where credit's due. My friend Dan Norton, who we've mentioned a lot of times, none of this is possible without him, because when we started going to Worlds, when I met him at Worlds, and he'll chime in, maybe you might know, Justin, 2010-ish, give or take.
It was 2010. Yeah.
Okay. So basically at that point was when I met Dan, and he started to, of his own volition, decide to help me. And he was more wired into more wired into the kids, right? He knew the community people. and I was completely foreign at the time. And he would go around saying, you want to sell to this guy, and we've got this opportunity. And he would just hustle. And since that time, it's just never changed. It's just the kindness of him and the odd couple partnership. But it's been invaluable because he let me have success. He showed me success. He introduced me to so many of these players. And then I started going with my wife to Worlds every single year thereafter until the pandemic. And so we built a routine, and there were so many people that now their kids are gone, but the Jim Rolls, are names from all the past, and the Silvestris, and the dad has passed away now. And so many people who were just kind and trying to help me, even today, Vince Kreckler is out there. And, there's just guys that people know as the OGs, that have always been helpful. And let me say one more thing. I mean, a shout out to Pokemon, a shout out to, his name is Dave Schwimmer. He's the guy that runs the events at Worlds.
Oh,
and
right.
I would be kind of lurking. I look at it as like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory guy who was trying to get that thing or whatever.
Right. Steal the candy.
Yes. And he basically, they would come to him, they'd say, there's this guy. And he could have said, get him out of here. And he said, it's David. Don't worry about it. He didn't know me, but he knew I was paying a fair price to everyone. I was paying thousands of dollars back then for a card that, I was paying as much as they were getting as a reward in the winning of the tournament. And he's like, he's here for the benefit of the kids too. So he's not paying, there's been situations since then, Justin, where kids have gotten tremendously ripped off. So I was always in it for me and the kids together. I had no way to know at this point the cards were going to be what they are now. But at the time, I was always paying the most and buying the first one. So so all of these people played some role in this amazing kind of, journey. Yeah.
And it's really great to hear you tell the story, because I think it speaks a lot to the perspective of the community, that we all want to help each other. And you have your goal, I might have mine, but we're helping each other in whatever way that is. Maybe you need knowledge one day. Maybe you need help starting a business. Maybe you need help getting your collection completed. Everybody's just so willing to help each other. Now, I know Dan charges you an outrageous, fee behind the scenes, but we won't get into that. We'll save that for another day.
Justin, I had a message on eBay today. Somebody bought a Blastoise card from me on eBay today, and they said, not the one that you want, by the way.
I didn't lose the card I was looking for.
That's the one he wants, by the way. So he sent a message to me, and he said, I bought this card from you, and he said, I want this other one. That's the one you want, Justin. And he said, I'm starting a Blastoise collection, and just asked me, can I get a discount? And I said, you know what? I'm dealing with someone else. I'm on a podcast. I'm going to see if I can work something out with him. I have to be honest with you. But if it doesn't work out, I'll come back to you. So then he came back to me and he said, what's the difference between the card you have at this price and this price? Now, why would I bother to answer the question, right? Oh, I'm too big and I'm too important and I'm too busy. No, the first thing I thought is you have to give back. You have to give back. So I wrote him a little bit of a dissertation on condition. And I wrote about how people care or don't care, how some people want the card, some people want the condition. Some people care more about the investment, where condition is all important, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I sent him. And he was very appreciative. And I think you're right. I think it is community. And I think you lose community if you aren't out there willing to help people and be kind to people, if they, even if you can't help them, but at least maybe passing them forward to someone else. So it's very important. You're right.
Yeah, I had somebody recently in the same vein. I'll share a story. Somebody reached out to me and they said, well, why is this Shadowless card so much for just a trainer? Or he said base set card so much for a trainer. And I said, well, it's actually the Shadowless version. And I explained the dates and like what you could look at to tell. And I said, if you look at this here, this is why. And if you look at the price difference, here's a couple of resources. You can go look at this place for raw or this place for graded. And you can see there's a difference in premiums. That's why this one's a little bit more than the regular unlimited version. And just taking that a little bit of time. Obviously, you can't answer every question in that full depth, but when you can and you're able to, it definitely helps a lot of people out. So, and they typically are very appreciative. It goes a long way. Yeah. Dan's catching strays the whole streams. It's character assassination. We love. Just kidding, my friend. Just kidding. Um, you mentioned it, and I'm curious of your thoughts because you and I spoke before yesterday as well, and we spoke before the stream, but we also touched it here, and that is uh, as we get older, and I'm not too far behind you. We start to think about things a little bit differently. Um, you humored the idea of passing your collection on to somebody. Obviously, we've also spoken about, which we can talk about here at the end of this, but selling off the extras, the loose ends of your collection to just kind of get rid of the noise of what you have acquired. That way you can focus on just your collection. But also that collection will be a piece of history in a sense. And clearly we can't take anything with us when we go. What are you going to do with it? I'm pretty sure you don't want to leave it to your kids or to the will because maybe they just don't have the same love for the hobby and the collection that you would. You gonna pass it on to Dan, or have you given it thought?
No, and I don't know why you would say that because he's on the podcast. He's nodding like this right now. He's jumping up and down. Pass it on to me. You know me. I mean, come on, Justin. You know better than that. Just hang on.
He paid me to say it. What do you want me to say, Dave?
That's ridiculous. All right, use your common sense before I get off early. Okay, hang on one sec. No, I can't eat dinner yet. He keeps talking. There's another hour or whatever to go. Just relax. Okay, I just had to talk to the wife for a second. It's all good. All right. So, okay. So, no, I don't. There is no kids that want it. That is number one. There are no kids that have the detail orientation or time or attention span these days to even warrant the desire to be involved. So, as I said earlier, there's never one possibility. There's 10 or 12 or 15 when you start to really look down in the trenches. I don't know the answer. I certainly have new grandchildren coming. Maybe one of them takes an affinity for it.
Okay.
I have my 13-year-old who right now has no interest except for Fortnite and basketball. So, but again, may not have the ability to live tremendously independently. I hope I'm wrong. And so maybe he might be someone that's, got dealing with it at some point. I just don't know.
When you get there.
Yeah, I think I have to. And I think I have to hope, I do. The one thing that I do health-wise that's a little different than other people is I really don't have stress, although I'm very type A, fast personality person, when I need to be. Otherwise, I'm not. Otherwise, I'm just as chill as can be. I don't care. But I have both modes. I don't have stress. I know how blessed I am in life. And so I hope that gives me a bit more longevity than it might allow for other people. And so I hope that I have more time to ultimately deal with the decision around it as far as the whole collection goes.
Okay. Yeah, and I love living the stress-free portion of life because while it does take a little practice in the beginning, it's so much better.
Yeah.
It's such a better way to live, and you're happier. Everybody around you is happier. It's just it's definitely something that will change your life. But if you're stuck in that worry, concern, scared mindset, whatever it may be for you, and that's just the habit you've built, it's hard to break, and I get it. But have people like David here yell at you on screen until you can just smile and laugh, and you forget all your problems. It's okay.
And leverage the resources. I always say I'm glad to help anybody. It doesn't have to be Pokemon related. If you've got a family issue or whatever, all those years of wisdom make a huge difference. And I have no agenda in helping my clients and helping somebody. It's what's best for them. So when somebody lays out a situation and I can try to be helpful, it means my life is still meaningful. I can still help people. And I consider all of the hobby people that interact with me and follow me, I don't care that they don't live here next door to me. They're all my friends. Mm-hmm. And I choose to interpret it that way. I would do whatever I could to help them. And when people come into Vegas, invariably more and more people, can we come by? Can we take a look at this? Absolutely. Come by. or I'll bring something to you and let's just get together and have a meal because that's what makes it really special, and it's just that's the positivity of the community that makes all the difference. But you're right. If you're going through something, use that phrase, figure it out, and consider everything you can do. But priorities wise makes all the difference. What's important to you, and how do you de-stress? And the one good news about the pandemic, this is not good news, folks. This is terrible news. But since the pandemic, nobody cares about anything. Half the people barely, you guys know this, half the people barely do their job. Everybody's scraping by. You're hiding from bosses underneath tables. Nobody knows if you're at home or at the lunch cafe or, out skiing. So the thing is, just do what you need to do and slide by and live your life and enjoy it, because that's what everybody else is doing. So I'm not condoning the least, effective denominator of work ethic, but it's part of what I see every day and in dealing with customer service people and all the rest of it. So, enjoy life while you can.
Well, if we step back actually for 1 second, and since you indirectly told Dan he's not getting your collection,
right?
Let's go back and answer Peke's question and kind of tie it back in nicely here. What is one of your favorite stories about Dan? One of the things you've enjoyed the most in your journey together?
Oh, goodness gracious! I mean, that is wow. I don't even know where to go with that.
That you can say in a live recording.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I honestly don't. There's just. I think my favorite story about Dan is when we started doing coffee talks, and I would just, I would kind of deride him or chide him or, just have fun with the fact that he's the dry to my spicy in how we interact. And so I've just enjoyed over the years, and my wife always says, you've just opened that kid up, like he's gotten to understand a little bit of sense of humor and all the rest of it. So, that's the most special parts, when we're on a podcast and we're doing coffee talks or whatever, and he's like, I don't want to do this today. We're not doing this today. Nobody wants to see this. And I go, Dan, everybody wants to see this.
Let's do it.
Answer the questions, so that's the fun of it, the personal stuff, knowing when he comes to my house, what he likes to eat and, that he never washes his toes, like that kind of stuff is my personal stuff. I'm telling you guys, those toes, you don't want to go near his toes. I don't know what's going on with the toes, if it's like a religious thing or something, but and I offer to wipe him. I say, can I at least wet wipe him? And he goes, no, stay away from the toes anywhere else. So I don't know, but yeah. So
we won't go into the anywhere else. But...
Okay, good. That's
fine. My kids may watch this one day. He does say, should I start recording our phone calls and release the super cut of you being the most stressed out I've ever heard a person?
See, the thing is, that's an interesting
when you bring the bill.
But as you know, and this is what my, again, the family members will say, oh my goodness, Dad, you're so stressed. I can hyper up. I can do whatever. It doesn't change my mindset. It just doesn't matter.
Right.
There's times when I'm screaming at my son because he's not doing the work I need him to do or whatever. And I'm not stressed. It's just part of being a dad. It's just part of articulating in a manner to make someone listen when they're not listening.
Get movement to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. My, again, how you speak to people to get action. There's quiet, there's noisy, there's back and forth. It's no different than, we're basketball coaches. You'll never be a great basketball player if you don't change the pace of your game. If you go one speed, anybody can measure that speed. So when you change the pace of your communication, your delivery, that's how you get across. But I'm not stressed. I'm just not, it's just not a part of who I am. So
I think that was an invitation, Dan. Bring it on, he says. Bring it on.
Yeah. Record what you want and just don't share it for anybody.
All right. Maybe changing tracks just a little bit. There's one thing I heard you say that I would love to hear a little bit more. And I only heard it once, but again, I'm sure I haven't heard everything that you've put out there. And it was around, you actually held some local league play for some local families back in the day when you first got into it in 99, 2000 time. Did I hear that correctly?
I think you heard it
Or is it
completely incorrectly. I don't recall
okay?
anything to do with that. So yeah, so I don't
Okay.
recall anything. I don't know if I was allowed to do those leagues by the Pokemon company. Ixnay with the idiove, okay? Cut it, delete.
I'll
No,
cut
I
this part
did.
out. Don't worry.
I did. I started and back. It's amazing. I don't remember those things, and it's so funny that you're watching some of these old videos and actually hearing that, because it just doesn't even. I don't think about it. I did. We had local families, and I signed up to be a league leader, and I would have all the kids from the neighborhood come over with my kids. In that, I guess it must have been the 99, 2000 timeframe when the game first came out. And it didn't continue. We didn't stay on with it, and the kids didn't stay on, and I didn't stay on. I remember receiving Pop 1 and Pop 2 series packs. So by the time Pop, meaning Pokemon Organized Play, for those that are watching, still the most popular thing that sells on my eBay after all these years, my few remaining Pop 1 and Pop 2 series packs. But I never got to Pop 3. So by the time that was there, I was out and had moved on, and the kids weren't involved anymore. So I did, though, and it was fun, and it was fun playing. And then you fast forward all the way to when I was going, would have been San Jose. So it would have been maybe, gosh, I wish I knew when my kids were born. I have no idea. Too many kids. But anyways, maybe a decade ago, it's got to be less than that, 7 or 8 years ago, we lived in 2 locations because I had sort of bought another residence to try to get my son to play basketball at another school. And so we were traveling down every day. And at night I would be in the room, and I started harboring the notion of playing the Pokemon game, because I go to the World Championships and I'm very, very jealous of everybody that gets to play, and I don't get to play. And I don't get to enjoy the fruits of that process. And I was doing very, very well. I mean, for an old guy with, memory issues, the big fear I had was that I wasn't going to be able to act quickly enough in my maneuvers. I knew the youngsters could just do it faster. I could do it strategically. And then I'm running, and I'm doing this online training, and I'm getting better and better and better and better. And one night I step into a match, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. I have no idea what I'm saying right now, but I step into a match where basically my cards are leaving my hand. So it's not taking prize packs or whatever that wins. I'm running out of cards because this guy's just taking my cards. However he did that.
He's forcing you to deck out. Okay.
Yeah, whatever that is. And so it was just like obliteration. And I said, oh yeah, you have fooled yourself into this. You have do not do this. Stick
Log
with
off.
what you do well and get out. So yeah, so that was my all the way from the beginning to the end. And then I'm a collector.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did you host those at a location? Like, where did you host the league events? At the house?
At my house.
Okay.
At my house, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a bunch of the neighborhood kids over, and we would invite, and they would tell the school. And so they would try to get their friends to come over, but I wasn't attached to a venue.
Okay.
The closest I came to a venue back then would have been, they wouldn't have let us do it, but Toys R Us, when they were in business, was doing tournaments there. And so we would always go over there and see if they had promo cards or whatever we could get. But yeah, there was not really any game stores. The only game stores were KB and Toys R Us. Yeah, KB was when we started buying in 1999 when they was lined up in front of the doors with the kids. So yeah.
Okay. I was curious because I didn't get to hear too much of the story, and I know I was maybe missing something. And I was curious to see what that went with, because it doesn't sound like something you would typically hear, given that you didn't really have too much of a business in terms of like a retail store. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, where do you host a play? How did it all work out? Thanks for sharing. Well, I think then we can transition a little bit into the business side, not necessarily business of Pokemon, but your journey a little bit, because when you started off and you told us this is how I got into financial advisory roles out of maybe trying to become a lawyer, we left a lot of gaps here, and I told you we were going to come back to them. So I know that you had a proficiency in computer programming in school. And I think one of your professors or something recognized that. And so they kind of got you into this job where you were auditing military computers. Did I get that right? So you would travel around, go to military bases, and you'd analyze the code on the computers. And again, this is before the release of the War Games movie, so 86,
I
85.
think War Games was 84 when it was released. I'm just
Okay.
guessing, but I think that's when it was.
Okay.
And I was doing this in the 81, 82 period, give or take.
Okay. And so you're analyzing code, which eventually led you into mainframes, which we'll talk about. But that is really interesting because you're essentially doing security analysis on the code of the military's computers in the beginning of the 80s. Can you say more? Like, I'm so intrigued as to what this was like, what you were doing, what you were looking for. What was, I mean, just give us a hint of something here, as long as you don't, have anybody watching or listening right now. Just,
We know no one's watching or listening. That's easy. So,
Thanks a lot,
the funny thing was that for the company, which was called EDP Audit Controls, and they were out of Oakland, California. And I have to state everything with direct clarification now, because
please,
as Kamala Harris said, she worked at McDonald's and Trump didn't believe her. So I got to make sure I've got some actual dates and times in case somebody wants to fact check me. Dan, fact check away, you little son of a gun. Okay, so here's the deal. I was young. I mean, it was really an incredible opportunity. And so I was 20 years old, 21 years old, and EDP auditing was the idea of security checking not only the code of computer systems at a facility and an organization, but also the actual physical facilities. So we went to military bases and stuff. We actually tried to break in. We tried to look around when they weren't looking and find our way in and see what gates and doors weren't locked and all the rest of it. So we did everything.
You were basically Sneakers, the movie.
Correct. Site analysis, all those things. But the funny part is, at the end of this whole thing, I remember having the company had a dinner, like a celebration for us, where we got the first viewing of War Games in a theater by ourselves, just as a company, to kind of signify what we were doing was something that real, because it was the brand new idea of this whole industry. And so we created the first computer programming software to essentially go through and analyze code and look for things that might be out of whack. I had a background in many different kinds of coding back then. So Fortran and COBOL, and it was coming into C and other things. And so I would be sitting there with literally like a program that was this much on the old printout pages, and you're going through lines and looking for ways that somebody might be able to Trojan horse into that. And we would find stuff. I mean, again, the sophistication level was very different. But eventually you would find the holes, and you would document them in the reports, and you would do the site analysis, and they would do a risk assessment of the whole thing they were doing. And then you would present it to the heads of the military bases. And I was doing this at 21 years old when I was afraid to fly on a plane at that point. Of course, now you're flying every 2 weeks, so you're not afraid anymore. But I was just a kid, and I was just in an incredible opportunity to gain confidence from that. So yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. It was really neat.
I heard that as part of the story, and then I realized that you never really dove into any details. I gotta hear more about this. Then how did it transition to selling multi-million-dollar mainframes from there?
Well, the idea was that when you know the code, and you know and you sort of know the inner workings of both programming languages and programming, logical programming for whatever application you want to develop. That was the next iteration. So I became a software engineer at Data General, which was one of the first. Fact check it if you want. I'm not kidding about this stuff, guys. They're not in business anymore. You won't find a thing. So they were the first really mainframe developer. And I don't even know, what was it called back then? Everybody went to a new language, which Sun Microsystems went to. Somebody will send it in the chat right now. But it was, we all went to these mainframes with a certain kind of language that everybody's using. And Sun was known for it back when they were the big company, only to finally phase out many years later. But we had contracts with local, like Pacific Bell, which today would be, Verizon or something like that.
AT&T, I think.
Yeah. And so we would go and we'd sit on site. And as they bought our computers, we had to train them on the use of them and how all of the programming work and how we could customize it for their own needs, et cetera. And so that's what happened. I started in the software side. Eventually, my bosses said, do you understand the most prestigious thing you can do in this world is sell? The most prestigious thing you can do is sell. And they said, the only difference between if you sell some pills to, give you hair gain from your hair loss. I shouldn't have said that, Justin, too soon. I'm sorry. Don't take the hat off now. I didn't mean it. I don't know what was in the back of my mind.
Definitely not coming off now. Thanks a lot.
No. So they said, and then it just goes up from there. So now you sell a $1 million mainframe. And then they said, then you sell a $50 million jet. And so it's just, the more you move up, the sales cycles are longer, but the pay and the incentive and the prestige becomes more. So they talked me into it, and it was all a bunch of baloney. So because I couldn't wait. I'm not a guy that could wait a year for a sales cycle. It didn't work. And I actually I forgot to mention this. So right between all this transition, I ended up at Hewlett Packard, and I was running the security department there after my previous experience. So I go to Hewlett Packard. Yeah, and I'm sitting there in an office, and I've got this office. It's monstrously big. No one's bothering me. No one even knows I'm there. And they said to me something like, David, if you hear you're going to do a great job for us, you're never going to make more than $33,000 a year. I just want you to know that. That's what you're going to make for the rest of your life. We can give you other offices. We can give you other computers. And I was scared out of my mind. And I should have even listened. I should have stayed there forever. But something in my mind said, you know what? It's just not going to work. I can't make a thing for the rest of my life. And I moved on. So, yeah.
Wow. So this is the part, and all the joking and how you talk yourself down. I never would have guessed that you were actually leading like the early stages of cybersecurity in a sense.
That's what it was. It was the earliest stages.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Awesome, David. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Where in this journey was that? Well, let me first ask now, from that point, from mainframes to jumping into financial advisory, what was there anything in between, or is that you went from one to the next? What was it? What was something significant or noteworthy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I know when the business, because the interim was when I went into the sports card business.
Okay.
I decided
that's what I mean. Okay.
I know now. I do remember what happened. So I was working at Data General, and I think I was selling the computers, and I started dealing with the person that I was buying sports cards from in more detail. We were going back and forth. Deals were getting larger and larger. I was spending all my money on buying top sets with Mickey Mantles all those years. And at some point he said, why don't you come here to Texas? I was National Sports Card Investments. He was Texas Sport Card Inc. And he said, why don't you come to Texas and we'll merge our businesses and we have a great opportunity here.
Okay. That's when he left. Okay.
And I elected to say, you know what, it's time to try this. It was right when my son was born. So maybe late 80s, 89 or something. Because I remember my son I remember when he was a baby and I had stuck him in the what is that thing they sit in, the car seat essentially, which I raised my kids in a car seat. I was a great dad. Anyways, honey, don't cry. Just sit in the car seat and dinner will be coming in a few hours. I didn't drop my kid ever, except for the one time. And I don't want to talk about that right now. And I caught him on the way down. So it wasn't too bad. So we had the cubbies where the inventory was, and there was one empty. And I remember just pushing my baby in there and he was just sleeping and it was cool. So.
All right. So if we then go back, so you were, and this is one of the stories I enjoyed from your kind of deep dive with Dan. You're at the table and you're at one of the conventions, nationals, or whatever it may be, and somebody comes up to try to buy out the guy's table of like 84 Donruss, boxes, and you're like, hey, I'm here first. I'm going to buy the table out, which then led to this kind of sports card business and expanding into that region. Is that right? Is that kind of the start of that kind of transition as well? Obviously these are all happening in parallel.
Yeah. I mean, that was before I think I went to Texas, but it was very close to that. Right. That was kind of my entrance into it, when I would go to the shows and I would look for cards and stuff. And that's what happened. And I just impulsive stupidity that sometimes works out. You take a gamble. And so when I was standing at the table and I was looking at this guy with these boxes, and and literally it's just what you said. Some guy came up next to me, and I'm a kid and he's a big adult. I'm just a kid, and he's like, I want to buy everything on the table. And, so I'm thinking someone knows something. And just, sometimes you just bite your lip, and I didn't. I opened my mouth and I said, what are you talking about? I was here first. And so he sold me everything on the table. And it turned out to be 80. It was the red boxes. So I think it might've been 86 Donruss, or I don't know what year.
I thought it was 84. Okay. I think, 80,
might have been 84. Whatever the red ones were, I can remember that. The whole table was red. And so I ended up walking out with all these boxes that ended up doubling and tripling in a matter of weeks. And then from there, I started acquiring, distribution relationships with around the country. And we would go to Costco's or whatever was the wholesaler at the time. And the ops would come in, and they
pallets.
would be pallets. Yeah. And we just wait there and, just start loading the trucks and cars. So it was anywhere you could get the inventory, which is essentially what's going on with Costco and Sam's Club right now, Crown Phoenix and Sky. Go get them now before they're gone. So it doesn't, cycles don't change that much. They kind of just repeat.
Just move them over to a different category, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right. So then you're out there in Texas. I know from your story that you also then later got that relationship with Upper Deck as they came out, as you mentioned earlier. They offered for you to be one of their, handful of distributors for their cards as they released it. You started that in Texas, but then later went back to California to kind of split and basically double the distribution, double the income, or double the intake of the cards.
Right.
From that point, though, that's really interesting too, because you're now at the pinnacle point of when Upper Deck is hitting the market, which is really another huge spike in that realm of at least basketball, in my mind, at least. That's why I saw Upper Deck when I was growing up. So hitting that kind of peak moment before I got saturated, as you mentioned earlier. And that's so cool that you were there in that moment. And you were even speaking to comments like they didn't really limit you to how you sold it, what you sold it for. You were selling boxes, singles. They were sending you 800 card bricks of specific cards in the set, and you just had like a brick of the cards, and you basically just sold them however you saw fit. The first year was massively successful, and then things started to fall apart. And that's, I think, back to your point earlier where you said things were going downhill in the recession. Is that right?
Yeah, and it was not only the recession, but it was more so that what is it when something is brand new and they such and such wears off, the novelty of it wore off.
Right.
So that first year of Upper Deck was all about Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards, and it was the #1 card in the set. And we were getting the first year, it's like, I wish I could almost compare it to, it's almost like base set in Pokemon versus Jungle or whatever. Like it held an allure about it. And so we were getting sets, and we were getting booster boxes, and we were getting the bricks of singles, and everybody wanted them. And you wanted to be the first one out there, right? Just like that would be the kind of an analogous to Surging Sparks. And, nobody knows right now if the Pikachu is going to go up. Is it going to be 100, 200, 1,000? It depends on how much printing. And so when you're out early, you can often win. People want that supply. Other people want to pay for that supply, and they'll go for it. Well, as they stabilized more as a company, and we get to the second year, 1990, I remember the blue boxes versus the green boxes. Everything was green, Upper Deck 1990. It started to settle a little bit, and it was still very popular, and things were going, but that it just wasn't to the same level of popularity. Okay. The amount of people clamoring to get those cards was not the same. And within 2 years, so really by 92 is how I couch it, because I remember was selling a house or something, and the values were down, everything was down. And between that time and the next, few years, not only was it major manufacturers coming out with competitive sets, it also was many, many small manufacturers. You had every conceivable type of card that could come out, from wrestling to golf to tennis to, you had the cards of the pretty girls, the bench warmers. I think they're still out there today. They're still making them after all these years. So
Wow.
it was
Okay.
everybody makes cards, and now it's just too much. It was overwhelming. And I liken it to, I always joke about, I don't shop. So I'm sorry to say, fortunately I've got my family that does that, because the grocery store is a challenging place for me. But you want to go, let's say somebody actually bought a can of corn anymore. I don't think they do, but if you go and you buy a can of corn, what do you buy? Like, there's 23 of them on the shelf. How do you know? So that's what I likened what was going on then. It's like, well, what do I
Right.
buy? The Score, the Sportflix, or the Upper Deck, or the Fleer, or the Donruss? Like, it was just overwhelming. And people, I think they felt that glut, and it really parachuted everything down.
Is this the same time that you, or shortly thereafter, you started the actual retail store? Because then you opened your own store in Pleasanton, California, right?
Yeah, when I came back. So that would have been,
Yeah.
basically would have been
Okay.
90 or 91.
Okay.
Yeah, that
So that
time.
was all happened at that time. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
You've already mentioned here a couple of experiences very loosely, but they really ruined as you said, the innocence of the hobby for you. Um, what was that one experience like, getting robbed by gunpoint? That had to be life changing, because you said it, I think, when you're talking to Dan, and you spoke to the fact that in order for them to do that, they had to watch you for some extended period of time just to know the patterns, what you were doing, and that really sat with you. But in that moment, what was that like for you? Sitting there running the business, you got your retail store, and then somebody comes in at gunpoint.
It was absolutely petrifying. I don't know how to
Mm.
describe it any differently. And that's scary enough, but I mean, and there's no way to couch that and people have been through much worse. So, I mean, again, I don't want to downplay it, but I don't want to make myself seem
Of
like
course.
anything,
Yeah.
because, I had a client once in my financial advisory business where the husband was a seller of fine art, and people broke into their home, shot him dead, and shot her in the chest twice in front of their
Wow.
two young children. So people have it worse, a lot worse than I ended up having it. But not only the fear of the moment, like, take what you want, get out, that what you normally say, but it's when it's all over and you don't feel safe for a long time. You just
Mm.
don't feel safe. Everything you knew about safety
It's
is
gone.
no
Yeah.
longer there. And you do realize someone was watching you. And gosh, there was something in the news recently about, I wish I could remember. I'd like to give an example, but I can't. But I was a woman who something happened, and she just said, I, like, you and I would read it and we'd think that's nothing. But the loss of innocence, because she
Mm.
always had to be looking over her shoulder, even though it wasn't an egregious thing, but it was bad enough that it just changed the way she thought about things. And so, um, you know,
Yeah.
things like that,
Mm.
things like my uncle and aunt were robbed in their home, and the robbers didn't just steal things. They went in the refrigerator, they took all the food and they rubbed it on all the walls and everything. So the violation that you feel when that happens, and so
Mm.
as a kid, when I saw that as a young kid, I thought, never again am I going to wait to put an alarm system in. I'm not going to wait till the robbery happens. I'm going to
Mm.
understand you put it in to prevent the robbery from happening, if you can.
Right. Right.
Now, I will tell you, there have been people that have tried to break into this home here.
Mm.
And so it's still scary. You hear of something, you look on a camera, and there's somebody trying to break in your door. So it's nothing is foolproof, but you certainly have to anticipate and understand. And but all of these things, unless you're just oblivious to things and just like, oh, I guess if you smoke enough stuff or whatever, like, that's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But it does, it changes you. And it really, um, it's hard to trust again. You talked about trust and giving trust.
Yeah.
I'm that same way. I think that's just a trait of optimism, but it's harder to trust again after stuff like that happens. Yeah.
Do you feel like you've ever fully recovered?
Yeah, most definitely. Right.
Okay.
It was a period of months. It wasn't years or
Okay.
anything.
Wasn't too bad. Okay.
No, I recognized heavily in the beginning how much a toll it took, but for me, it's a time. It's just how I fuel as an optimist. So time ends up, my brain goes back into mode of we're just living life and you just go.
You got to move forward. Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Well, there's a couple of other stories there that, we don't want to dig up too many of the negative ones and sit too much in this space. But I definitely can try to understand your perspective of having your business, and which is one of the reasons I've been concerned about taking some of the same leaps myself in terms of physical store. Things get crazy. And even here in North Carolina, laws have changed, and I won't get into the details, but people robbing the malls, and like you can't do anything. It's like, just let them come and take it. It's like that's just not okay. So yeah, we have concerns if we are to ever take that step, but we're definitely thinking about many things. But I hate that happened to you, and but I do understand why it took away the innocence, and you had to move on. So we'll jump into then.
Don't jump yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go in the quicksand for just one more minute.
Sure. Go ahead.
Don't open a physical store. Don't even think about it. It's a different world, and they are going to be robbed, and they're going to be broken into, and everyone ultimately gets that way. And so you end up with slats on the doors and all the rest of it, and maybe you can figure a way around that. You have to go out and you're going to pay some person rent, and you've got to pay for the overhead, and you get some selling. As long as you can craft enough space these days in your home with online type of selling, I just don't think, look, I don't want to sound like I'm negative on the stores and your neighborhood game store, but I just think if you have a choice and you have other ways to sell, it is more profitable. It is more safe. It is less debilitating when something really does go wrong. You are correct. No one's going to care because it's just become the norm. And, and I look at my situation and this really pains me because I've always said I would love to have a museum. That would be a treat. That would be the ultimate treat. And I've talked about it for years.
Yeah.
But as every year has gone by, it's become less and less safe to have anything that's out in the open in some kind of retail type of space. And I would do the museum in a way that I wouldn't look to make it a profit center. As long as my stuff was safe, I'd do it all for charity and have people come in and see things, raise it and hand it off to whatever charities would love it. I don't know how to do it safely. You can even hire a guard, then they're going to come in and shoot the guard. I mean, it's just not, the more things are worth, the more people are desperate, the more the circumstances come together for something that's just not good. And in a place like that, in a retail setting, the amount of time you need to grab things and get out is minimal. Whereas at least if you're in a home or you've got stuff in vaults, they can't do all that at once. They could put you at gunpoint, tie you up, and if nobody monitored it, then they could have all night to take what they want. But if you've got alarm systems and people watching and those kinds of things, that's to me a much better money spent than trying to do the retail type of situation. It's not that I don't admire it. I understand you've got I don't, again, just things I've seen passing, Pokey Dean and Pokey Chloe and whatever, and they've got the point of view and everybody loves watching them. But it's a huge obligation with a lot of risk. And I don't know if it's different there in their country and they might feel safer than we do here, but it's not a safe thing here at all right now.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned Pokey Chloe and Dean, because in their case, they actually, if I remember correctly, they actually bought out or rent a space that was previously a bank. So it actually has a vault, a bank vault in the store. So whatever's valuable, they could just literally lock it up. I'm not sure if they use it that way or not, but I sure would love to have that if I did have a store. That would be perfect. Put all the valuables in that space, shut up for the night, and okay, they can take a pack of sleeves if they need to, but outside of that, they're probably not breaking into the bank vault. So
exactly.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I'm sad to hear that you don't think the felt hat Pikachu situation didn't give you confidence to open the museum, but I understand. But I would love to see your things out there one day. I know John's talked about it in Poke Radar. I've actually heard many people talk about it. Jake's talked about it. It's a wonderful idea to all just work together and amass this Pokemon library museum, if you will. It'd be awesome. Yeah, if we could find a way to do it, we'll keep you in the loop.
I always ask for people to give me ideas because for sure I'd absolutely be interested. It just has to be safe. It's to spend a lifetime acquiring and have it gone in a heartbeat is just too risky. So I almost wanted people talk to me about doing it virtually, and maybe there's a way to do that. Again, you have to make it in a situation where I don't want to do something where it's Patreon oriented, where people have to pay for it unless it can go to charity. If I could have somebody help me structure that, that'd be fantastic. Because I'm not looking for the money. I'm looking to share the collection, but you still would have to have some sort of display and something. So I don't know. I'm too old to figure that part out. I need a millennial or the next Gen X, Z, Y to come in and help me at this point. And you're too old for that. You are like almost.
I'm not too far behind you, buddy. Not too far. All right, out of the quicksand, back into finance advisory. Obviously, that's going to be something that you probably finish up with and moving into retirement at some point in the future. Do you have anything else in mind before you call? Obviously, what you're doing here is a lot of work itself in terms of keeping this collection, maintaining it, supporting it, sharing it. That's a job in itself. But do you have another career thought in mind after this role?
I don't know. I think you're kind enough to let me speak about my son at some point.
Yes.
So I could talk about it now or later.
Go ahead.
I did have a fleeting thought today. I think I'll be in good enough physical shape that if I choose to want to be busy with my time after the culmination of my wealth management advisory career, I definitely could see myself continuing to coach basketball. I have a tremendous degree of expertise there, and I coach like I'm 25, not like I'm going to be 70. So I'm running on the court faster than the kids just because of my intensity and wanting them to understand what I'm demanding of them. So I don't see that changing, unless something really goes bad, my knees or something gives out and you just put on the braces and keep going. So I thought about that for a fleeting minute today. Like I could see that as something that would keep me busy and bring a little income and doing. But I really think that if my life goes according to the way that I want it to go, then I will be working with my son, who I've mentioned to you and everybody knows this part of my story, but my son is 13. His name is Luke, and he's autistic and has ADHD. It's a very difficult mix. And we recognized very young, because he was adopted by us into a basketball family. He was adopted at birth. We recognized very young that he had a predisposition, or they call it predilection or whatever, for basketball. And so he always had a basketball in his hand, and he would, and if we took it away as he fell out of his little stroller, he would go ballistic. Every time he would pass a hoop in the car, he would start screaming. And so this kid that started all the way back then, and I've coached his brothers, and they've all played at some higher level, but I'm 5'7" these days. And so my tallest son is around 5'11". So, and so he didn't, he played D2 in college, but just isn't the athletic type to go further. And Luke has turned out to be different as an adopted child. Each year I've tried to teach him and make him part of basketball. And it's been slow going because I've always felt like he'll catch up. He's just younger. Never could give him medicine. Younger physically, mentally, that kind of stuff. Never gave him any medicine. Still have not given him any medicine for any of it because it stunts growth. And the reasons it stunts growth, a lot of it can be because it suppresses appetite. They're not really sure, but it can suppress appetite. And so you don't eat. So you stunt growth. It's not actually just stunting growth. So long story short, he still, when we tried to give him medicine just to see what it did, he would just projectile vomit. And so he never took it down. He was never able to really take it successfully. So correct. So I just kept teaching. And so 4 or 5 years ago, he would just stand on the court, and people would say, why does he stand on the court? He doesn't move. They said, do you tell him to stand on the court? I go, no, I don't tell him to stand on the court and not move. Why would I tell him to do that? So they'd throw him the ball, he'd shoot the ball, and that was all he did. And every year it's been a progression, and he's gotten better and better and better. He's always had a great long shot. So he's a very good outside shooter, which is most important. And now he's about 6'1". So he's been able to surpass the family being adopted. Thank you. And so he was always projected to be 6'3" or 4", and we need 6'4", just what I know what we need. So if he can get another 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches in the next couple of years, hopefully, he's got the talent to, I believe, to make it in the NBA. And he's really good. And so, but he needs to be trained every day. And so that's what I want to do. You know, I want to get in, I want to, you know, decrease the priorities of other things in my life and really start working with him again every single day. He's stubborn and doesn't like to listen to anybody, but he will listen to me. We do lift weights 4 days a week. And he's, you know, yeah, he's a twig, but he's very strong. So everything is going the way that I wanted it to go. And we'll just see, but I could see myself if I were to retire in a couple years or 3 years or whatever, he would still have 2 or 3 years left of high school. And by that time we'll know, I mean, he's either going to be ready or not. And I think he's going to struggle, because he doesn't have focus and he forgets to do things. And someday he's going to walk out, if he's cooking himself a meal, he's going to walk out and leave the pan on that's what happens. So we're in a different world, in the financial world of sports now. And it's a really intriguing possibility for him to be talented enough, if he can stay injury free, to be a part of NIL, name, image, and likeness, which is now how colleges are allowing you to, they're being allowed by the NC2A to recruit players and pay them money going into college now.
Wow. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's changed the entire landscape. He could conceivably be good enough to get an offer where they say, we're going to give you $500,000 or $1 million to come to school. And if that happens, then we're able to set him up financially for a while, in case mom and dad, who are much older, you know, having him at 50, getting him at 50, buying him at 50. By the way, if your client ever asks you, let me give you a story. So a client sat with me across the table one time. I'm going to go back again.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
There's a dog food commercial. You guys have seen it. It's like Fresh Pet. And your friends are over and they go inside the refrigerator and they see this food and they're like, what the heck is this? It's in you got dog food in your refrigerator. And the person says, that's not dog food, that's Fresh Pet. And then the next thing you see, the friend's being kicked out of the house because your pet is more important than the friend who criticized your dog food in the refrigerator. So that's what happened. I got a client, he's sitting across the table, he's a multi-million-dollar guy, and he goes, wait a minute. How could you adopt a kid? You can't love that kid more than your own biological kids. That didn't even make sense to me. And I said, let me tell you something, buddy. That kid cost me a lot more than my kids cost me. Okay? I love them 3 times more than I love those kids. So it's what Luke has done is he's kept youth in my life, and he's given me a challenge and kept me young and kept me like, I've got to keep him accountable for lifting, and I do the same thing. And I've got to teach him when to make the right decisions on the court and how to read defenders. And so I want to keep that partnership up, and I could see that going all the way through. If wherever he goes to college, I would be there and I would be involved in continuing to help him along that process. I don't know if he'll go. I don't know if you can go to college with his educational proficiency or not. He may have to do something in the interim, graduate high school. He won't probably. I don't know if he'll go to high school either, but you can play in high school in Nevada as a homeschooled kid. So as long as you are better than at least one kid on the team selected, then you're allowed to take that kid's slot if you're in the district of the school as a homeschooled kid. And there was a rule set up. Yeah, the football player, I think it was Tim Tebow. I'm not sure. Those of you who are sports fans, that I think he was the first one to create. There were laws were created around him for homeschooling and being able to play. But Luke is not great educationally and doesn't like it and really fights it. So we may have to figure that away and figure if he's going overseas or if he's going to go into the G League or somewhere before he gets up there, if we're able to get him there. So. But, you know, I know everybody goes, the people that don't know me and don't know how much basketball I've been involved in for 30 years, they're always like, yeah, right. Your kid's good enough to make it. Nobody makes it. And then they come over and they look at him and they say, that kid's got a little something. Well, body, you know? So, you know, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very admirable. I would say
and God, I'm
latter
sorry
part
for
of it.
talking so long. So
No,
forgive me.
no,
I can't,
no. This is what I'm here for. I love it. I love it. Do any of your other kids still engage with you in that way? You mentioned they had spouses, and I'm assuming that they're along the journey. You mentioned grandkids having their own families, but are you engaged with them in any other ways that will, I would guess, maybe share that time that you have with Luke, or are they too? What are the ages now?
Yeah, so so I have one child who's about 30. I can only get near these ages, and that's the best I can do. So forgive me. There's too many
Give or
kids,
take.
as you know. I think there's at least 8 kids last count. We said that in the beginning today when I was describing who I am as a human being. And I don't know why I even did that. Please disregard all that. I think I made most of that story up. But my son is 35-ish, give or take, and he's actually on my advisory team. So he joined my business, and so about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So he's on the team. And he's also a snake breeder and reptile breeder. So he's got a huge presence on the Instagram stuff. I think it's called Scales, Scalez. Reptiles or just Scales, and he's got thousands and thousands of followers. His videos are always coming up on reels where he's got the snakes all over his arms and stuff. But he actually breeds for different colors and different combinations of snakes that are very rare and have never been together before. So he does both of those things. And then, so I don't really see him that much because working from home, although he's out near Vegas, we're just busy. My 2 boys in line, Sam and Goose, they both coach in the Henderson Bulldogs basketball organization that we run out here. I founded the first AAU basketball team in California about 30 years ago with another gentleman. Yeah. And so, so when we left California 3 years ago to come here, he's still running it there. It's called East Bay Bulldogs. And there's about 240 kids a year that still play in that program. We don't have access to the same level of facilities here that he does there with the middle schools and stuff. So we just crafted something smaller when we got here. So we have about 80 kids that play for us, give or take, plus private training. But both of my sons, Sam and Goose, coach the teams, coach at night, coach the games, and do private training. So I do see them here all the time, which allows us to stay involved and continue to collaborate in that endeavor.
That's cool.
And then, and my
you have a daughter, right?
Yeah, I have 3 daughters. One just had her 2nd child. So
congratulations.
So she's doing fantastic. She's a nurse. And then I have the one younger than her. She's a homemaker, and she's now pregnant with her 1st child. And then my youngest one is give or take a year, 22. And we just every year on her birthday, I post a posting trying to basically sell her off. So
I think I saw that
there. I don't know when her birthday is. I'm gonna go somewhere in January. So if you look for somewhere in January post, you'll see a post where I offer my base set booster box.
I saw it.
Yeah. So if I can get rid of her at any time, we're still going to do that. But she's very particular in her desire for a man to live the rest of her life with. So so if you meet any of those criterias, then you might have a shot. But right now I haven't been successful in that endeavor yet. So
you're paying the booster box to take her? Is that what you're
Absolutely. That's the dowry. And if somebody thinks they need more, just ask. I could care less. Got to get rid of this girl. Yeah, it's too long. It's just too long. Move on with your life. So
I saw the post. I was like, this got to be a joke. This can't be.
No, it's not a joke. She got some nice, and every once in a while she'll get a bunch of followers, but you know what? Then they just don't. There's boxes. I don't know why people have boxes. You should have an open mind, My wife absolutely despises that I love every single woman I see and come in contact with. That should make sense, by the way. I don't know where I was going with that, but I do. I don't care if they're Asian or Indian or what. I mean, American, Caucasian. They just all have something. You gotta have an open mind. My daughter's like, nope. It's got to check out these 47 boxes, and that's it for me. Okay. So anyway, so I don't care as long as you're happy, sweetheart, you know, but I'm not co-signing. So I'm just saying.
Good luck. So, but it does sound like you got some good interactions. You got some working with you through financial advisory. You got some through the coaching. Other was through the grandkids. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they're all somewhat interconnected there, and I think that's going to give you a nice, fulfilled time in retirement. That's for sure. I
We're
love
very
it.
blessed. I mean, honestly, they
Yeah.
all followed from California. That was completely unexpected. Every one of
Wow.
them was there, and they decided to relocate. Which even my son, who had built an underground zoo for his reptile breeding stuff in California,
Wow.
decided to come here and rebuilt the whole thing here. So
Wow.
it's pretty remarkable. And my joke about that, for those of you that like to know how I keep it real, because I told you today on my post I was going to keep it real. You know, every once in a while, my wife and I will fight. Yeah, every once in a while. Keep that in mind. Honey, turn it off now. I'm going to start talking about you. She's got like 15 computers going. It just seemed like we got a few more chat followers. So
Appreciate that.
basically, what we fight about is we fight about the kids. And that's the only thing we fight about. It's like, you know, she's too easy and I'm too hard. And the usual parenting kind of struggles even when they grow up. And so once every 6 months or a year, it gets really bad. And we call a friend that's a therapist and we start talking. So my wife will say, the David's terrible. David, the kids hate him. He's so tough and they can't stand him and I can't stand him. And the therapist says, Stephanie, can I ask you a question? And she goes, yes, ask me the question. I'm doing a good impression, by the way. It's sort
Yeah,
of
I'm about to say, is this how she sounds?
yeah, I'm going to get killed for this later. Anyways, I just got to call for the beer sooner. More beer, please. Okay. So she says, I shouldn't say her name, wife.
Whoops.
They don't, cut that out. They don't like her. They don't like David. She goes, no, they don't. He's too hard and they don't know what to do with him when he gets in that mood. So she says, okay, let me ask you a question. You're moving to Vegas, right? And my wife says, yes, we're moving to Vegas. And she goes, and how many of your kids are coming? And my wife says, all the kids. And she goes, it's probably okay. It's probably okay. They probably don't hate him that much. Like it's going to be okay. Like some reason they're pulling along for the journey. Because I promise I'm not giving him handouts, you know. I will tell you, I believe in, those of you that know Mark Cuban from Shark Tank and the basketball owner of the Mavericks and whatever. I listen to him talk at times and he says, I do not care about my wealth. And by the way, guys, whatever wealth I have has been accumulated mostly in the last few years. And I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been very fortunate in my purchases. But Mark Cuban is very, 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 very billionaire wealthy. And he says, I want my kids to remain humble. Mm-hmm. I want my kids to appreciate others and be empathetic towards others. And it's not me about if I give them stuff, that isn't what's going to help. It's them understanding you still have to earn it. You still have to work. You still have to understand what it is to be responsible and accountable, those things. So I practice those same things with my kids, and I think if we're fortunate enough to have any wealth as time goes on before we pass, that it'd be nice to give them something while we're alive, as opposed to a lot of people just pass when you're gone. But as my wife says, which is very realistic, we've spent our life busting our butts. My wife and I operate at 5 times the pace of my kids. I mean, it's not even close. We work and we work and we work, and they work. We work and we work and we work and we work and we work and
they work.
Yeah. So so she's like, no, I'm not looking to let's just hand them a bunch of stuff while we busted our butts and now the wrinkles are coming in and I've already fallen asleep 4 times. You see my head bobbing in the no. So you have to balance the love and the family with the values you're trying to teach as well. So
how did you instill that in your kids, or attempt to?
I think the most important thing is you by how you demonstrate. They get to see every day. They get to see every day a relationship that's loving and been loving for years. They get to see that we're always hustling. They get to see I've always preached in all of my coaching and all of my parenting. I want you to achieve excellence, not mediocrity, if you want to, if you're capable of it. So these are the steps that differentiate excellence from mediocrity, and you can decide if you want to take them. But if you want to achieve success, you have to take these additional steps. You're going to have to work harder. I grew up in an era where working an all-night shift meant nothing. It was part of what you did. If I had to be at that military base the next morning and the computer went down and that report wasn't ready, there was nobody going home, folks. It's just what it was. And you tell me today that you're going to stay all night, there isn't even such a thing. There's no such thing.
Police would be called.
The police would be called for some kind of abuse or whatever. So it's just they don't understand work ethic, and they don't understand and even I've got family members and people that have my kids don't have the nurses. My daughter and my son's girlfriend both have wonderful nursing jobs, a great job, great pay. It's just there's no better job as far as the pay and for what you do. And it's just kind of a lifelong. You always kind of have a career. But I'm talking about whether or not it's nurses or it's attorneys or folks that I know. Everybody's complaining about something. Everybody, it's too much. It's too hard. The work is too much. I can't do it.
I don't like so and so.
No, and I always feel bad because what you don't build in that situation is you don't build resiliency, and you need resiliency to combat the difficulties of life, right? And I had one of those jobs that we talked about. I guess it was the EDP auditing job, what I mentioned before. Yeah. When I got that job, I went in the door the first day and they handed me some manuals and say, go and start reading. And I hid. I hid in a room and hoped that no one would find me because I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember that feeling, that completely just that chaos.
Your heart sinks. Yeah.
Well, it ended up that through the course of the first year of my work there, my boss, who had hired me after I was hired, did not speak to me a single time in the first year. When you work for a place where your boss doesn't say a word to you for a year, let me tell you, folks, it ain't fun, but it was the best thing that ever happened. Because after that, every job was easier than that. Every job was better than that. And I had already built a resiliency towards a very difficult situation. So when I hear the kids talk about this person's mean and this person treats me this way and this person does this and I can't stand working with him or her, your perspective is different if you have a little resiliency built in,
You spoke about your dad working a lot in the beginning of the podcast today. You never got to see him too much. What did he do?
My dad was in construction. So that's really, my dad was a sort of a jack of all trades, but through his entirety of his life, he got licenses as an electrician and as a plumber and as a contractor. And that's really what his focus was. And he was amazing. And being somebody who had no formal education at all, being able to learn all of that on his own. So, and they did anything to make a dollar when things were tough. I remember them, they bought a glass retail entity where they were selling plants. One time they were selling cars. One time they were selling boats. I'm saying they, meaning him and his brother.
Okay.
So he did whatever he had to do to support his family and make a living. And he got very fortunate that he was able to buy some property on an undeveloped court at one time in a business zone, and ended up developing it and selling the buildings to some doctors and stuff. And that's how they were able to basically make it, he and my mom, in their lifetimes, just because his hard work and a very lucky purchase ended up, carrying them to at least what I would say is not having to worry financially when it was, at the end, so to speak. So, yeah.
And your mom, she was home, or?
Yeah, my mom was always home.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, I think yesterday, and then my mom is still 89. She'll live to, I would say, at least 100. I just from my experience with my clients and stuff, she's smart as a whip. Mind is still completely functional, so I think that she's got quite a bit of time still left to go.
Yeah, I've shared the same sentiments with my grandmother. She's 89 as well. And she was here recently, and I spoke many times on the podcast about, she basically came, she was helping out. She was sorting cards. She didn't know what this whole Pokemon thing was. And but she's smart as a whip. Like, she caught right on to, hey, can you give me a set list? I need to know what all these symbols mean. Okay, no problem. Got her a set list. She started organizing everything. And then now she collects, and she has her own binder, and I just sent off packs and some cards to her today so she can have. I need more sleeves. I'm like, okay, Grandma. I'll send you some sleeves. But she
That
still cuts her own grass.
that's
Still,
amazing.
yeah, I love it.
That's just
I love it.
amazing. I mean, I wish the only thing I would tell you is, I don't know if your grandma has any money at all, but the only thing I would say as an advisor, having been through life the way I've been through it, um, I'm a big fan of stopping folks at that age from doing the physical things like that. It's the
Which
physical,
physical? The
uh,
lawnmower?
yes,
Oh,
and
okay.
only in the
Okay.
sense or whatever else. Because if she's mowing the lawn, then she's changing a light bulb. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
She'll
it is
fall.
the one thing that takes that longevity and shifts it to nothing. One fall, one spill, one not expected thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm begging my clients, no, just if you have any money at all, get someone, pay for the darn lawn to be mowed. It's not worth the risk of cutting a decade off your life so you're not going to be as active. Who cares? Go sit on a chaise lounge out in the sun if you need the sun. But you've got to understand that
Right.
your mind can't overcome the things that are happening inside your body that will ultimately cause you, to break something that now takes you downhill.
I
So
feel like you're talking to future David there.
when you say that, ha ha, great, jokes on me. Right. I still hear what you're saying. I'm in the room. Okay. Future David. I'll tell you where future David is. He's in a drunken stupor running down a freeway right now. Future David is here. Future David practices what he preaches. And I don't do anything dangerous, I mean, when I'm walking up and down the stairs, it looks like I'm 85 years old, and people they probably think I'm 85. I don't care, because I'm not going to allow myself to tumble just because I miss a step, because I didn't see it, because I'm older and the eyes don't work or the leg doesn't work. So compound that to 25 years more to your grandma.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense unless you just say, we don't care. And you know what? That's what she loves to do. Let her go out mowing the lawn. But there's, I had a discussion with my mom last night, and she's like, "Oh, I'm perfectly healthy and everything's fine." And I said, "You fell 3 times this year, even though they were inadvertent. They weren't anything. She caught her shoe on the carpet. She did so.
Yeah.
You
Small
can't.
things.
Yeah, you can't, because a small thing as an elderly person, there's no coming back. It turns to the next thing. All right, I got to throw one thing in real quick because people are still kind enough to be on here, which is absolute silliness. But thanks for watching. You're my friends, and I appreciate it. And Justin's on here. We'll just ignore him and we'll just talk. My dad passed away 2 years ago. I'm going to give you the 2 lessons that he taught me that I've taken for the rest of my life. They are the 2 most important things that my dad taught me. Each is very relevant to my life today. So number 1, first thing he taught me, not relevant to Pokemon at all, unless you make a bad purchase, and that's not what I'm intending to convey here, is pain, P-A-I-N, pain means you're alive. So all of us deal with stuff every single day, whether or not that's physical pain, mental pain, whatever it is, the things you go through. And what my dad's message was, if you get up and you feel pain, you got up this morning. You got up and you got to live your life. And I'm in pain all the time. I beat my body up through lifting and just, all through the years and stuff. Yeah. And I put it aside, and I try to teach my son, who's going to play basketball, the same lesson. Let's understand how to build that strength of character and mental and physical ability, because you just don't care. Pain is nothing. And we all look at it as we've all seen those videos of some kung fu fighter or jujitsu guy breaking boards and stuff. And probably half of us don't even believe it's real. I'm not sure it is. I don't care. But I choose to believe that what they've done is they've conditioned their brain in such a fashion that pain is so quickly disseminated and dissipated when they do it that they don't feel it anymore. So I think that's really important, because life, as we mentioned, can be a lot more difficult these days than it used to be. And the second lesson my dad taught me, and this one is completely Pokemon related, but not intended to be so, because my dad would have never even, I don't think my dad knew what Pokemon was. So good man, though. The heart of gold. So he said, you are never going to buy something for a certain amount of money and just look at it like that. So here's my example.
Is it the same one where you say you don't buy something from nothing to the price? Is that the same
That's
phrase?
exactly what it is. Yeah. So I'll give you the example, and then we can characterize it in a better way. Because when I start sleeping, everything starts slurring, and it's not the beer, I promise. It's just not enough sleep. Luckily, actually, I'm a late owl, Justin. Just so you know, when you're getting up, I'm going to bed. So we're in good shape.
I noticed because when I checked Instagram, you were on like 2 hours ago. I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always doing something. So here's the example. There has been innumerable amount of times I've wanted to buy something in Pokemon, and it might be $1,000. And so, or maybe it's $1,400. And I'm like, God, I don't want to spend this. I really only want to spend 1,000. Or gosh, this is what it should be, 600, but the person's charging me 600 or 800 more. And I have to make a decision at that point. What am I going to do? And I'm not spending, the key is I'm not spending $1,200 on the item. I'm spending the 600 from 600 to 1,200. So I need to understand, I can't look at it as if, well, I'm spending this much money. I'm only spending the difference of what that I would have spent or would have planned to spend to the other thing. And that has allowed me over and over and over again to say yes instead of saying no. And as this franchise has grown and prices have increased over time, I've been so blessed to own many of these things that other people hesitated and said no on. And so I'll give you an example. And these are stupid little examples, but they're salient just because of what we're talking about. So Justin says today, Justin's interested in a card that I have. I think I changed the price a little bit. So you're going to pay a little more, Justin, if you get it. So forget that it's lower on eBay. But let's say there's a card and it's $280 on eBay. So the person that contacted me today, I mentioned this in the story earlier, said, could I buy that card for $250 from you? Now, normally I would have probably said yes, but I knew Justin was interested. So I said no, because I am in a selling point right now. I'm not worried about every dollar. I'm worried about getting rid of stuff so I can focus on my son's basketball. But you know what happened? The person didn't buy it yet. And I didn't tell them they couldn't buy it. So they could have bit the bullet and spend $280 for the card.
$30 more. Yeah.
$30 more. They didn't buy it. So right now that person does not own that card. $30 cost them from a card they wanted for their collection. This is my example of when people overthink things too much. It's the same thing when people are talking about, charities and stuff. And gosh, you'll spend $6 or $7 a day on a coffee, but you don't want to save that 5 days and go spend $30 more on a card. So I'm going to mention this. I don't know if I should mention this. I mean, I could give you I guess I could give you what is it when you divulge something for the first time on a podcast?
I'm not sure the word you're looking for.
Somebody throw in a word. But it's the scoop. It's the scoop.
Okay.
I'm gonna give, so I will give you the scoop. I don't really want to give the scoop here because I don't like to jinx myself. And that's the only thing. I don't ever like to say I own anything until it comes into my possession. So maybe I won't. Maybe I'll figure out a way to feature it. I just don't want to jinx myself, guys. But I'll tell you the story about it. And if you guys can figure it out on your own. Dan, no talking, because I know you're going to figure it out when I say this. Okay. So I didn't tell you specifically yet. There was a card that was recently at auction. It's known at this moment to be a one of one in the Pokemon world. It's a card nobody would want but me, because it's one of one. It has no interest. Nobody wants the card. You'll figure it out. Nobody would want it except for one other person. He already has a different situation. So I need it to fill the collection. And I had planned that I would pay no more than $25,000 for the card. That was it. That was what I made a decision to do. And as time went on, I learned a little bit more about it and seem to believe now that there really is not more than one card of its kind. And I'm going to give a little hint here and say it's a regular sized card. It is not a jumbo card, which makes it even more valuable to me. That auction closed at, with bids and everything, over $61,000. So I bought the card. I actually created a limit for myself, because as it was moving, I said that I wasn't going to pay more than, I don't know what the number was, but maybe 70 or whatever. And I just kind of figured it out. And I have a situation right now where I've got a little more disposable income and I chose to buy the card. Some of you know, recently in my posts, I bought the last 2 boxes I needed for my entirety of all booster boxes that have been sealed. One is
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. One is the 4th print. It's not the 4th print. It's called the UK print base box. And one is called the red logo jungle box. And so having done that and looking at my card collection and being so close to completing almost everything, everything's in it, that this is one of those cards that's truly might be a one of a kind. And so I bid it. And I could have said to myself, and I know these numbers are outrageous. And again, I'm not trying to brag in any way. I'm trying to be really honest and real with you guys. So I could have said in my mind, I'm spending $61,000 or $62,000. But instead I said, you know what, here's what it is. The difference is about 30,000, give or take. And I'm going to make that 30,000 in whatever way I'm going to make it. I'm going to sell more merchandise. I'm going to work harder on selling what I have. I'm going to go back and you know, whatever I've got. And even if I got to sell a little lower on you guys know I have some Cosmos whitebacks from the fossil set, which are incredible. Yeah. Maybe don't sell them for 4,000, maybe sell them 2,000 or 3,000 pieces, whatever I have to do. Don't all buzz me up. So whatever I've got to do to sell them to try to create the money, because it's a one of a kind and I didn't want to lose the opportunity. So it's that same thinking that begins to allow me to narrow in on what I'm trying to acquire and say, I'm going to work harder or do this or do that to try to pay for it.
Make it up. Yeah. Where was your dad applying that? Where did that principle come from his life experiences? Because I'm sure he gave it to you much like you do from your own to your kids. Did you see him executing that in his ways?
You know, I guess I don't know. I think that, I don't know if it's so much I saw him executing, Justin, as much as we would always talk about it. So, you know, I was up until I went to Texas at 28 years old or whatever. That's when I went essentially.
Okay.
I was completely incapable of making any decision on my own. I had zero self-esteem. I had zero self-confidence. I was convinced I'd never have a job or work or be anything to anybody. I was never hireable. And so,
I would have guessed.
Yeah. And so I went to my dad. What do I do? I don't know what to do. What do I do? What do I do? Do I buy this house? Do I not buy this house? Do I rent? Do I get a car? Do I not? What car? You know, hey dad, which suit should I buy? The one with the 2 slits in the back or the one with the one? He would say, David, your ass is huge. Are you kidding me? You need the one with the 2. Yeah. Yes, of course. So he didn't mince words, but so it was through those discussions and constantly going there for advice that I was able to learn the lessons, that dialogue. As I got older, I went to him. I still went to him a lot, but I began to integrate some of my own decision-making abilities. And then one day, whatever that day was, maybe I was 50 or whatever, I went to him a couple of times and I realized that I was better at answering my own questions than he was at that time. So all of that wisdom had been passed through and there was no need for me to go anymore. I had confidence in what I was doing. But it took a lot of years. Yeah.
And I can see in a way, kind of tying this back to the phrase that we've been talking about, getting you to essentially just move forward, take that step. So you need to buy a house. You're willing to pay whatever, make up a number, 80 grand for the house. It's 120. You know, you're talking about a difference of 40,000. It's not the 120, it's the 40,000. You just got to move forward, take a step. Yeah, I can see him.
That's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. Or for example, you realize, well, I'm paying another 40,000, but I'm financing a bunch of it. So ultimately, you know, and guess what? Your house is going to be a great investment long-term.
Right.
So I'm not as concerned with that. So yeah, you start to begin to, and so now, oh my goodness, the house payment is, I'm making up a number, 1,400. It was going to be 1,200. So it's not 1,400 or 2,000. It was going to be 1,500. It's $500 more a month. Right. Now there's clearly some of us that struggle and can't afford that. But if you can figure out where your priorities lie, and I really want this house, it's beautiful and it's going to make me happy every day, and I'm going to spend 70% or 80% of the time I'm not working in it, you do understand and change the way you're thinking about some of those decisions.
I love it. It's an unblocker. It's an instant unblocker. I love it.
Yeah.
Dan says, I knew you would about it.
See, I knew it. You're such a, well, great. Well, surprise, surprise, mister, it wasn't an easy decision, and it was one of the hardest ones I've ever made, my friend. One of the hardest ones I've ever made, especially because I've been selling everything, and I jumped back in because of my compulsion to own every single English card.
Have obligation, Dave. Obligation. I know. Which I do want to touch on that before we bring this into a nice close. And that is, how has it been letting go of some items? Is it easy because you have one for yourself, or maybe even two? Is it just easy to let go, or do you still feel some attachment to these things and it's hard? Do you struggle?
Letting go of my items was very difficult. Very difficult, because when you've accumulated them over 20 years, and what Justin is referring to is the fact that I've been on a mission over the last 3 months or so to go faster. It's amazing. You get a little tired and the vocabulary just shoots right out of there. Hey, you're smart. No, you're not. You're tired. You're dumb now. Shut up. I'm on a podcast. Stop. Was that you? You're supposed to be the quiet one. What are you doing? Yeah, your head. I know what you got, that thing going on up top. Okay. So I've been on a mission to sell things because a good friend of mine has helped me put in perspective. We've talked about, what do we want the next 5 years of my life to look like? And so, and I realized, again, it's the sad reality of people passing, that life is not getting any, right. I'm not getting any younger. And so I need to spend time with my son. That is what I want to do. And having, millions of dollars of excess inventory means that I've got a huge task to undertake to sell stuff. And I don't have the time. I don't have the time. So you start to understand, I don't care if I maximize every dollar. When I started selling stuff, I didn't go in and say, you need to pay me top dollar. I started looking for people that would give me 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, whatever. And maybe it was worth 500,000, but if the guy's going to take it, I'm going to give it to him 400, but he's going to clear me out of the stuff. Right. And it's easy and simple and not time. That's what was important. And so I've been able to do that, but watching it leave my house and my, and watching it, and knowing I don't own it anymore, and seeing it appear on social media somewhere else, that's hard. It's hard. And the only thing is that I have to then reprioritize. And so what is my priority? My priority is to make sure that if I drop dead tomorrow, that my family will be okay and won't have an obligation to sell all this extra stuff. Right. And that's what I did. And that's how I looked at it. And I coined it very positively. And I said, I now have some money in the bank that can generate interest for the rest of our lives. And I'm happy with that. And I'm most happy with the fact that I didn't touch the collection. So there is still one of every booster box, and there is still one of every theme deck, and there is still one of every trainer deck and a deck, not battle decks. What is a battle deck? You could make 100 decks. I'm not going to buy them all. But they're nice. I don't think I want to do those. I don't have like battle decks and whatever, but all the good vintage stuff. And there is still one of every single English card, trophy card, world championship card. There are still the variants of the Cosmos Hollows, the Discos Hollows, all of the beginning sets and all the variants. You guys know I sold my one of these, but I kept the other. So there's my pre-release Raichu ready to podcast with me. So so the one of everything is still here. And so I haven't said this the whole podcast, and it's a big flaw of mine, a huge, huge flaw. And it is that I'm all or nothing. I only know all or nothing. I don't know anything in between. Go hard on something and then everything else gets put to the side. So I'm trying to find moderation. I'm trying to find moderation. I'm trying to deal with my weight issues by not talking about dieting anymore. There's no more such thing as diet. There's just trying to eat a little better, because
lifestyle change.
Time of doing that, right? I've never continued to keep up with my collection. Every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, I go and find everything I'm missing. Well, thanks to Dan now, I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to stay engaged all the time and keep it rolling at a free flat rate. When I think of so selling the stuff, I didn't sell everything. I sold the extras, and I've got a few more things to go that I'm going to sell off and try to finish this task soon and still have kept the collection. So moderation is always your best way to go. When you've got personality issues and flaws and stuff, for someone like me, it's hard. I still lift, I lift like I'm 20 years old and I'm 63. It is not good for my body. It's a mental illness. It's, I know it sounds funny, but it isn't. It's true.
Yeah.
And
I still lift too. Yeah.
I can't do anything about it. I don't want to be anything but young. So I continue to beat myself up because that's what I know. So, so it's moderation for all of you guys that live life the right way. You know what I'm talking about. And all of you guys that have all kinds of issues, you're like, ding, ding, David's talking my life. So,
and it's funny how, I think even when you talk about that from the perspective of, some of the best in the industry, they've done the amassing of riches, not necessarily in the diversification, but in the hyper focus in one area for a period of time, and then diversified to protect afterwards, right? So that hyper focus, I think, gets you to certain places, but then you can try to change the lifestyle, to your point, and maybe have a bit of a better balance once you've reached a certain threshold. Are you also seeing that it's hard to ship all this stuff out? Are you literally yourself packing orders every single day, or have you outsourced all this?
No, I've done it myself. I've been very fortunate. What I try to do here, from a little bit of a selfish standpoint in the beginning of the Instagram journey, more recently over the last several months, to raise the follower numbers so that I could go out to my, followers. That's just such a bad word. Let's call it friends. Followers is just dumb. But so I could go out to my friends and I could say, I have deals. I have stuff I need to sell. And would you like to buy it? And unfortunately, it doesn't appeal to the great vast majority of people. But I was able to find, some larger buyers like streamers and things like that I could say, will you buy all my Champions Path packs? Yeah, let me take them. And so it was a huge undertaking when you're opening hundreds of boxes, or or some people wanted them shipped whole or whatever. But so that stuff was the big bulk of what was happening. And then there was some larger deals where people actually flew in and, and took some stuff. So it was a lot of work, but it was really a very compacted amount of time. And now it's a little tougher. Now what's happening is I realize that I'm not having as much success on the Instagram. So I'm starting to put everything that's going to be left on eBay. And for any of you guys that are watching, go to eBay. I will continue to load the site more and more and more and more. And just contact me off eBay. Don't buy anything on eBay. See what it is you want, and then we'll craft a particular discount for you. And you just deal with me directly. So. But
that's, by the way, all the links are below. So if you guys are looking for, there's a link tree there which has his eBay. He's also has the Instagram links below. So anybody interested,
because the website isn't really active anymore, guys. David Pokey Persin. It's not. When I update it, I'm just going to update the header page to basically say that you should be looking at eBay, find what you like, and just message me directly. And I'll always make you. Right now, whatever I can sell it to you at, I'm glad to give you whatever discounts, because I need to get rid of this stuff so I don't have to sell anymore. I can just focus on the continued buying for the collection, which which hopefully some of the money I put away now will generate some monthly income that I can push towards the acquisitions I still need to make.
Right. Well, I think we've covered a beautiful array of different conversations here today, different highlights, points of your life. I loved hearing some of the stories that I haven't quite got to hear in the detail that we did here today. And I can't thank you enough for spending these 3 hours with me up until your wee hours of falling asleep at the desk. And but no, in all seriousness, I really do appreciate it. I think it, as I said to you, I think yesterday, it's something we don't get back. I say it every time, but it's time is so valuable, and I'm just so grateful you spend it with us, engage us in this conversation, had lots of fun, laughter, and humor along the way. And we'll wrap it up if it's okay, maybe with just two final questions.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course.
Let's look at this, and you may have a similar answer to maybe the advice from your dad, or perhaps you.
That one's too tough. I don't like this question already. Move on to another one. I don't even like the introduction to the question. Move on. Do you have any extra backups going on?
I'll change the wording. So
okay, that's fine. You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
With the plethora of knowledge and experience that you've had, and that's going from work to Pokemon to career and family and everything between, and of course the lessons learned, the mistakes. How would you, and obviously at this point, you're still the number one collector of all English cards in the world that we are aware of. You might have to
take out those two other guys. Give me that. Please give me that. I don't want anything else. Okay?
You're the only one I know. You're the only one I've. It was a poke at those two people who said they have the biggest collection that you keep joking about. Yeah, okay, it was a joke about that.
All right. Okay.
And so, how would you advise somebody step into the hobby? Players, investors entering at this moment, because we got a lot of new people coming in. They're experiencing this maybe for the first time, or much like some of us, reigniting the nostalgia from our baseball, basketball history, but now into Pokemon. What's your advice for them, having been through your journey as they come into the hobby?
So, the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was go slow. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what that means. And I want to caveat it by saying the more you know, I guess the faster you can go, but the less you know, you need to go slow to try to learn. And if you have lots and lots of money, then you can afford to make lots and lots of mistakes. But most of us don't. And most of us don't want to make those mistakes. So you really have to go slow, and you have to learn, and you have to research what it is that you're looking at doing. What are other people doing? Yeah. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. How are they being successful? What are the prices of things? There are so many resources out there these days that I don't even know of at this point in the hobby. Resources that tell every sale price of every card over the last 3 months, 6 months, a year, that people don't know exist, don't go and look at. So there's so much of that. There's research and just finding what it is you want to buy and how to buy it at the lowest price, and how to wait. And there's all these places to buy anyways. It's not just eBay, but there's all the auction houses. Sometimes things can be bought very, cheaply because people aren't following a certain auction at a certain time. And you have Golden and Heritage and the one that starts with a W, Weiss. And then there's some in the UK. So there's just a lot to learn when you get into any area that you need to spend time really beginning to look at. And don't be afraid to send a message or two to any of the people that you do follow or believe in or think have been successful. Leverage the resources of the community. I think that's really important, because it is a community where folks are nice enough to typically give a bit of that assistance. And then, start to wade your, what do they say? Dip your toe in the water.
Right.
What I will say is never feel like, and I've never embraced this lesson. It's sad. 20 years in, and I've never embraced this lesson, but hence my discussion of just buying a card for $61,000. I have to explain to you why I can do that. Guys are going to want to know why I can do that. I'm going to explain that right before we go.
Yeah, please.
So people can hang on for a minute. Why can I spend $61,000 and someone else would be dumb to do that? So, but What was I saying, Justin? Do you have any idea what I was talking about at that point in time? Anywhere on track.
Shutting down on me here. I'm losing them. I'm losing them,
Yeah.
guys. But no, we were moving from the idea of leveraging the resources in the hobby, but then
Okay.
you were
So
going to speak to something that you haven't done.
okay. So what I was going to say is, I always think that this thing that I'm going to buy is the last time I'm going to see it. Oh, that's the only one, never again. Oh, if we don't
Right.
buy Surging Sparks right now, it's going to go to double and triple and quadruple the price. Even if that happens, even if that's the worst case and you never own a box of Surging Sparks, you will have learned something from watching that escalation and watching supplies and reading people's posts about what wholesalers are giving out or cutting allocations. You learn and you learn. And then there'll be another set, just like Surging Sparks. It might not be the next one. Maybe it's 3 down the road. But there is so much Pokemon product coming out that you're always going to have another opportunity to acquire something else that you can either enjoy or collect or make money on or whatever. If you want to be an investor, I'm still a big proponent of sealed material. Some people aren't. They think, graded 10 cards are going to be big time and that's what you should be buying. That's for you to, again, figure out on your own. There's always going to be pockets. If you do more research than the next guy, you're going to have a bigger advantage than the next guy. But I do think, never think I didn't do the research fast enough, and so I missed out. At 4 sets a year, plus special sets, plus special boxes, plus special of specials, there's always the next thing you're going to be able to make money on. And sometimes it doesn't even happen. I mean, I bought tons and tons of Burning Shadows cases that were part of what I just got rid of. And they got to a price and people thought they were going to keep going. Maybe a year from now, I don't care if they're more money because I don't want to own them. But they just kind of stopped and they stood there for 2 or 3 years, and they didn't move again. So you don't ever know. One of the things to be aware of in this hobby that's a little different perspective. How can anybody get off the thing if I never stop talking? Just shut up. You're doing it again. I'm trying to get a little thing out here and I don't appreciate it. And the whole look over my shoulder thing is bothering me too.
The short arms that get me.
Yeah.
I can't even hit you.
Exactly. I got the same ones. They're like this. We are moving so fast through this hobby, through era to era to era, that I don't know how much money and time people are going to have to look backwards. I feel like there's an entire lost opportunity in XY and Diamond and Pearl, and because all the new collectors want Sun and Moon, or they want, Sword and Shield or Scarlet. Like it's just going to keep moving at the speed of light.
Same ships, yeah.
Right. And so I don't know. I don't think it's as easy. It's going to get a little more difficult as we go forward to navigate some of the older stuff. So you have to figure out what makes for a good set and what has kept interest on some of these older sets. And it can have a really good card, and yet it still doesn't have much power in the continued increase in pricing. So it just takes a lot of time, effort, research, and trying to set up a way that you do something that's most efficient. I talked about doing my Instagram posts every day. I used to pull out every single binder and start looking through for cards. And I realized it was taking way too long and too much effort. So I figured out a more efficient way was, as I said, to go to eBay and start just listing down the most expensive cards that were holographic of any character. I have every one, so I just got to go on the binders and find them. And that helped me get this done a lot faster, more efficiently. So I only learned that by going through 150 days of doing it the slow way until I figured it out. You have to figure it out, right?
Yep. Got to move forward.
Okay. I want to say my story about that because I promised I would. So in being completely transparent with you, when my team and I moved from Merrill Lynch to RBC Wealth Management in the December of 2016, we were recruited over. So they wanted us to come and leave the company. And when a company does that, what they do is, in my industry, they give you what's called a forgivable loan. So they gave me at that point something like $1.7 million. And I get to keep that money but I get taxed on it every single month. A piece of it, basically, I'm not going to describe this well, but a piece of it goes away. Every month I owe them 1 month of 9 years of months, whatever the recruitment deal was lengthwise. Let's call 7 years. 7 times 12 is 84 months. So that number is broken up over 84 months. And that piece gets taken off of the amount of money I owe back to the firm if I don't stay the entirety of time. So when it's all said and done, without boring you with the numbers, we hit our numbers every single year that we were there. So I got pieces of loans for 5 years, and they total out something like $25,000 a month. So every month that I stay with this company, I'm essentially, my net worth is going up $25,000 a month. So when I look at that purchase, I say the next 3 months are going to a card. But I'm fortunate to have the money that's, I can't spend it or anything, but it's essentially a net worth thing that I don't owe it back. And I'm able to have that money to buy the cards, which gives me a little bit more leeway than someone that's not that fortunate. And I understand that. But I just wanted to explain how, because it's not like I have the money in my pocket. It's not happening. No one's handing me the money. But it is, I'm very fortunate to have that little bit of excess net worth capital that's coming in by continuing to work at this company.
Okay. And if you stay through the whole time, you end up getting the majority of it back.
It's all paid. I don't have to pay anything back if I leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice deal.
It's not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal, but we built a practice over 25 years, right?
Right.
And that practice was worth something to them in the sense that all of our clients came with us and we could continue to pay revenues to the firm.
It's about the results. The trust goes back to our previous conversation. Do the work. Do the work.
Yeah, do the work. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, David, I appreciate the explanation. I think that does probably clarify a couple of things. We just thought you had, $61,000 in pennies, sitting around in the Pikachu behind you.
Nickels in the banks. Yeah. I gave up my kids' college education. Best news of my whole thing is none of my kids were smart enough to go to college. So God love them. Sorry, Rusty. Gosh love him for that. I'm sorry. You're not going to watch this, but if you did, my apologies. I really do.
I don't think Rusty will make it in 3 hours. I think he'll cut it off at that point. But we'll end it with this, my friend. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. What legacy do you hope to leave in the hobby when you're gone?
It's something I really haven't thought about. Maybe I'm thinking about it more recently in the sense of just starting to enter my mental framework. When you say it, the first things my mind thinks about, the first word that came to mind was positivity. I really want people to enjoy the hobby for all that is enjoyable about it and shut off the noise of all the negativity. In everything in life, there is negativity. People steal from Target every day, but we don't stop going to Target to buy whatever we buy there. We still enjoy our life and do things, even though the point of view of some of these folks that are doing the podcasts are meant to sort of jilt one way for views. So I hope that we can understand you're always going to have the people that are scammers, the people that switch cards from certain, plastic graded cases to others and on and on and on. So I just hope that folks can really enjoy and understand that's all I've ever done in the hobby is seeing the positivity of it and the innocence of it and the way that we can all collaborate together. I've got basketball players that we coach, 6 years old, 7 years, 8 years old. You give them a Pokemon pack for Christmas. For Halloween, and they just see their eyes light up,
Yep.
I just bought, this just came in today. Oh, look at.
Oh, is the Pikachu one?
Yeah, I got the Pikachu one. So, and it actually is real. Like it's a real, my Gengar one wasn't, but this one actually has the pebbling the way it's supposed to be. And so that innocence of what this hobby is incredible to me. And I bought that ball for myself so I can go in my gym and I can play with my Pikachu basketball. So that's number one. Number two is forever young. If I ever let them, I don't grade. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. If I ever let them actually, what is the word when you put your name on a
Pedigree.
Pedigree. If I ever were to let them pedigree, what I would use is, don't use it, folks. I'm going to get so mad at you. Anyways, I would put on forever young, and that's what the hobby does for me. Is it keeps me in that mentality of I'm still the kid that still loves the characters, and every time I open a binder, it gives me that special throw in words here because I sound like I'm beer. Look, guys, one beer for a guy 200 pounds isn't going to do anything. It's something that releases from your brain. Throw it out.
Dopamine?
Yeah, a hit of dopamine. Let's go with that. So that's what it is. That's what this hobby does for me. And the other piece of the legacy is I am the true collector. No arrogance. I never collected for value. I never collected for appreciation. I never collected for investment. I never collected to grade and show off my whatever in the tens, whatever. I do like near mint to mint cards. Okay.
Right.
98% of everything I own, maybe more, is near mint to mint, but I didn't need somebody to take it and grade it because I can do the same thing myself after being in the card industry for 40 years. So I didn't need someone to verify or authenticate. I didn't need someone to tell me. I could just acquire and enjoy and put them in binder pages the same way. And now they're coming out with these new kinds of binders. You know, this is the big binder that some of you have seen with the that they now hold the top loaders in these things. Yeah. So, you know, you can have the binder that you can put the hard card holders. Now they're coming out with the ones that have the slab holders, the same company.
Yep.
So you can enjoy it and enjoy your cards without having to answer to what everybody else thinks is right for you. And then I'm a huge fan of everyone's collection. My legacy is you collect what is meaningful to you. You know, what if somebody says like, I have a Clauncher collection? What is a Clauncher? You know, how fantastic is that? I mean, whatever it is, a Golem or a Blastoise or whatever. So we should all be supportive of whatever resonates with each other because everybody should feel good about what they're doing, condition-wise, character-wise, whatever it is, and not compete. Competing gets you nowhere. So I just want to be the guy that, you know, I mean, I guess it would be sort of be that ambassador for the entirety of the hobby and all of the plush and the clothing. And, you know, it's just, it all brings something to someone. And if it brings that special smile on a face, you know, I went to a club the other day. I don't leave my house, folks. I do not leave my house. And a friend was in town and he said, I can get you access into this huge, you know, DJ, and it's at the day club where the pools are there, and they're flying in girls that are gorgeous, and because they want everybody to feel like it's wonderful. And I put on my Pikachu shirt, and I'm sorry, it was my side deck. It's my Pokemon shirt from Pokemon Center. That'll get you a few people coming around you, okay? Even if you're an old man, you're like, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. Do you play the Go? Do you play the Pokemon Go? Do you play the Pokemon Pocket game now? So that's what it does, is being that ambassador that says, hey, we all do it our own way, but we're all part of this incredible hobby that we love in our own way. So
I love it. Yeah, the positivity is definitely felt here today for sure. We joke and we poked at each other, but it's all fun and smiles, and you can tell me how much you really dislike me after we end the podcast. So we'll keep that in private, of course.
Of course. Post about it tomorrow when I'm going to chat GPT the whole thing. Sweat.
But again, David, I think we will give just one second if you want to have any closing words, any final thoughts in addition to what you just mentioned there.
The only thing I said is what I said before, guys. Okay. You know, I can't thank you enough for your time and just, you know, your attention to the whole thing and just being a part of it, being, you know, following the journey. It's so much more meaningful for me to have all of my friends along. And I hope it comes across. You know, I try to inject some humor every day. I try to inject a little bit of a thought-provoking song along with whatever I'm doing. Nothing is premeditated. It's all whatever's in my mind at the time. But all of you that take the time and effort to do anything with me, and you know, Justin as well here, because he was kind enough to invite me on. I can't tell you how much it means to me as a human in this world. Even if you're not sitting here next to me, and even if I never, you know, Ivy fell asleep 4 hours ago, but But even if I never went to your shop or something, I promise all of those things are my bucket list things to do. So.
Well, again, I'll echo some of the same, but also to you, David. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you, everybody else on the podcast now. Of course, those who will watch later. If you haven't already, check out not only David's Instagram, his eBay store. Don't buy on eBay. Reach out to him. But also check out the Coffee Talks podcast. I have that link below as well. It's a great podcast, a huge, I would say, dynamic between Dan and David. Absolutely epic. Don't ever let Dan tell you that you guys aren't going to do the podcast. You guys have to keep going with that. We all look forward to it.
Appreciate
But
it.
we deeply appreciate everybody's time. We wish you a beautiful day, a good weekend ahead. We look forward to seeing you in the next one, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.